Hey guys, welcome back to Rocket Gyan, my fellow space tubers. Okay, guys, can you hear me and everything is all right? Then we can proceed with the stream. And yeah, so hi everyone. Hi Angel, hi Tech Hill, hi Dylan, hi Samuel. So today we have a very cool launch, basically a launch which is basically, you can say, can be made and adapted in sci-fi movies and everything like that. So yeah, it's kind of that, like that only. So Dylan says loud and clear. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much for that. So before proceeding on to what we have stored in for us, like as in what will be the launch and everything, before viewing the launch we should be knowing what is the launch all about, right? That's when we will be able to actually see and understand everything. So we can start by saying this. I should start by saying this only first, that today is China's Chang'e 5 launch, and this is the most ambitious launch of China because it will be attempting to return a sample from the moon's surface around about 42 years, means I should say, since the last we had the rock and the soil from the lunar soil, it was around 42 years ago. So after 42 years we are having this. So it's Samuel says it's not possible. Okay, unloading to moon, it's not hard, but it coming back into the shuttle after picking up rocks will be impossible. No way this gonna be successful in the first go. Yes, there are many things which can go wrong, but there are so many things which can go right. So we can have a look at that. So this is the rocket which will be taking this Chang'e 5 to the moon. Basically, this is the Long March 5 rocket which is going to take everything. So today we will be having the launch at LM5, which is Long March 5, and it has another variant also, LM5B, which launched the Taiwan 1 mission, which is the China's Mars mission in this July 2020 only. It launched this. So the difference between these two rockets is that in this one, the Long March 5 normal one, we have one second stage, but we don't have anything in the 5B configuration. We just have one first stage and the 4 boosters. That's it. So it's kind of like a SSTO to the orbit, which means a single stage to the orbit, right? If we exclude these boosters and all. Okay, so we will be having this configuration for Long March 5. Okay, cool. So what are the specifications for that? So the specifications are this. So you can see here, this is the rocket. This has 4 boosters, one first stage and the one second stage. Okay, this is the you can say a rough configuration, but the detailed one is like this. So here we have in the boosters, we have YF100 engines, which is basically runs on stage combustion cycle and produce around 1180 kilonewtons of thrust. But the thing is, we have one unique thing about this rocket, and the unique thing is, for the boosters part we have RP1 and LOX as its fuel. Okay, but for the main stage, the first stage and the second stage, we have the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as its fuel. So this is the difference in this, because it is having two different fuels in this single rocket. So yeah, that's the thing. So we have YF100 engines which runs on RP1 and LOX as its fuel and produces around 1180 kilonewtons of thrust with all those 4 boosters, I think. Then we have the tail section here. This is the tail section. And this rocket has fins. China basically has a very, you can say, a habit of having fins in their rocket. I can't remember any rocket which does not have fins in it. So yeah, they are very fond of this. Okay, so we have the tail section, then we have the rear section here. The rear section basically is nothing but rear transit section is nothing but which separates the fuel tanks from the rocket, the engines. Then we have the fuel tank which has kerosene, the inter tank section. Then we have the LOX tank here. This is the LOX tank here, and obviously the nose cone. Then finally for the 15th one, it says YF77 engine. So YF77 engine is a engine which runs on liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen as its fuel, and it basically runs on open cycle stage combustion cycle, and produces around 509 kilonewtons of thrust. The unique thing about this stage is that it has a really good ISP of around 400 seconds, which means it is like ISP is nothing but a mileage for the rocket. Like we have mileage for the cars, right? More the mileage, more is the efficient. More the efficient the car is. A similar thing is that more the ISP for a rocket, more efficient will be the engine. So the ISP for this stage is 400, around 400 seconds, which is like 8 minutes. So yeah, that's why they have that SSTO configuration, which because it can just burn on completely till the end of the orbit. Uh, okay, so yeah, that's the thing about the YF-77 engine which it uses. Then we have the tail section here also, the rear transit section, and then we have the liquid hydrogen tank and the liquid oxygen tank here. So you can see the difference between the size of the tank, liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. This is because the density of the fuel which is being used, as well as the if you can say uh, have your that combustion reaction in front of you, H2 plus oxygen giving H2O, it requires some extra amount of hydrogen in it. So that's why you can see a large amount of hydrogen tank here and a small amount of oxygen tank here. Okay, so that's the reason for that. Then we have the interstage, which houses the second stage engine. Then we have the YF-75D engine. This is also a you can say a liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen running fuel, but it runs on closed expander cycle. So every stage for this rocket runs on different mode of cycle, and that's why it is very complicated to handle, and they are handling it with ease. I mean, hats off to that. So yeah, then we have the liquid oxygen and the liquid hydrogen. Here also you can see the hydrogen tank is a bit larger than the normal one. Then we have the vehicle equipment bay. In the vehicle equipment bay, we have the flight avionics and the flight computers and all those things. Then we have the payload adapter, the spacecraft adapter, which basically not houses, which basically holds the payload in one place. And then obviously the spacecraft, which is the Chang'e 5 for today. And yeah, that's the thing. So now we can have a look at basically the mission profile and the Chang'e 5 rocket. I mean the spacecraft itself. Okay. So here we have, as you can see here, we have the orbiter, we have a re-entry capsule, we have a lander, and we have a ascender. This is basically written wrong here. We have a ascender. So we have four things in just one spacecraft. Okay, there are four sections in one spacecraft, and that's what it makes a very difficult mission. So basically what will happen is roughly images there in there in front of you right now. For the once the this rocket inserts into a lunar orbit, basically, okay, let's have a look at from the lunar when it arrives at the moon and it has injected itself into a lunar orbit. Then what happens? Then we have an orbital re-entry capsule, and then what happens is this thing separates. Lander and ascender basically separates. It goes and lands into some place on the moon. I'll tell you what place it is. Then here we have a drill for coring sample. We have a drill as well as claw for grabbing sample. So for this one, we will be taking two. They will be taking two samples. One will be from drilling, and one will be from scooping. Okay, scooping will basically, you can say, will scoop the crust of the moon, and hence we will be able to analyze that the crust of the moon. And the drilling sample will be basically used to take a sample of around 7 feet below the surface. So we will be able to know what's below the surface, and we will be able to analyze that. So that's the thing, they will be taking two parts. And yeah, that's really cool to have. Then it will store all these two samples in the payload. Basically this we have one you can say a space to house all these things, this one and the claw sample. Once it has actually housed and everything is closed perfectly, then this one the ascender stage will separate and will take off from the lunar surface. It will just take off, and then it will dock with the orbiter, which is already there in onto the orbit, into the orbit, right? This dock into the orbit, and this docking procedure and everything will be totally autonomous. Totally autonomous, nothing, no command from the control center, nothing. Everything will be autonomous. Then those sample which it has taken will be stored in the re-entry capsule. This is blue part, you can say here is a re-entry capsule. Then the orbiter will basically put that or re-entry capsule into an orbit which will collide the earth, which will intersect the earth's atmosphere, not collide, which will intersect the earth's atmosphere. Once it intersects the earth atmosphere, this will separate, this orbiter and the re-entry capsule will separate, and this re-entry capsule will basically then re-enter the atmosphere, the parachutes will open, and when then we have the touchdown. So yeah, that's the thing which is basically going to happen. So that's you can say a rough explanation of everything, not a rough, which basically a detailed explanation. So we till now we actually got to know what will happen around the moon. But what will happen before going to the moon, basically we will have to know. So this will happen before going to the moon. So we will have a launch. As we can see here, we have a launch from Hainan, China. Today we will be having the launch. Okay, then we have the earth moon transfer. So this rocket will itself put this payload to direct lunar trajectory, lunar transfer orbit, basically direct lunar transfer orbit, with no fuel spent by the spacecraft to inject itself into a lunar transfer orbit. So yeah, it will be a direct transfer. And then the earth moon transfer will happen here. Then we have a lunar orbiter insertion which will happen in this here. Then finally in the after lunar orbit insertion, we have the spacecraft separation, basically the lander and the sender separation, lander and the orbiter separation, and then we will be landing on the moon surface. So what is the location for the moon surface? Basically, if you ask me what is the location for the moon, where I mean what is that place where it is going to the moon, it is basically this. Okay, this one, the moon's dark side, dark patches which you can see here, the dark patches which you can see here, these are the places which it will be aiming to. If you need a scientific name, the scientific name is Oceanus procellarum, if I am not wrong, Oceanus procellarum. This is the most dark patches which you can see here. And why have they chosen this side? They have chosen this side because this is a side which is 1.4 billion years old. Okay, the soil and the samples which we have from the Apollo era was like from a site which was 3.4 billion years old, so it's a relatively younger site. So we will be able to know what has happened in the younger side of the, you can say, moon. And we will be able to compare and get the information and compare basically what we got from the Apollo era and what we are getting from this mission, and have a better understanding of the moon. So yeah, that's the thing. Then after that, once it has done the soft landing, then we will be having the lunar ascent. After the lunar ascent, we have a lunar rendezvous, which will be a completely autonomous one. After the lunar orbit rendezvous, we will be having the earth return, which we'll be having here. And then finally the re-entry and the landing. So the re-entry here, basically for this mission, is a you can skip re-entry maneuver. They what they say is, which means what they will actually be doing is, do I have any explanation or a picture? No, I don't have. So what they will be doing basically is, they will firstly enter the earth's atmosphere. Okay, and then again come out of the earth atmosphere, and then again re-enter the atmosphere. So this is like, first when they when they first enter the atmosphere, they will be basically reducing the apogee from the lunar to the, you can say, the not lunar, but the apogee will be reduced to a certain orbit, and after that it will start rising again, but again it will just fall into a suborbital trajectory and then enter the atmosphere, and then we will be having a landing here. And if possible, I'll be showing you what I mean to say, how it will enter and come out of the atmosphere and then re-enter. I'll try to find that image, but yeah, that's the thing. uh, so how are you guys? Viper says that's really interesting for a modern rocket. Yes, for a modern rocket without an upper stage, it's really interesting, but because it does not have an upper stage, there is a large chunk of rocket which is there into the orbit, and if it is deorbited also, and then it becomes difficult for it to burn in the atmosphere and causes, you can say, uncontrolled entry, if I'm not wrong, or what, I don't know, but it does not burn in the atmosphere completely, and that's why it has a chance of falling back to earth. So yeah, that's the thing. Now we can have a look at whatever I have said. We can have a look at the basically um, in a video format whatever I have said, so you can have a better understanding of what am I saying. Okay, so here we go. So this is the thing which they have basically. Obviously the lunar ascent, no, the rocket ascent basically. Then those four boosters will separate. Yeah, here we go. Then we will be having this payload fairing jettison, the first stage jettison, the second stage ignition, and obviously this payload separation. Then basically we will be having this payload insertion into the orbit. This is it is going to the moon right now. Retrograde maneuver to insert itself into the orbit, and now it will, as you can see. Acha, okay, one more part I would like to you to know. As you can see, it has a lot of solar panels. Yes, every stage has a solar panel in it. Ascender has a solar panel, lander has a solar panel, orbiter has a solar panel. So it's a really a very complex mission, and a lot means a lot, thousand things can go wrong. Not thousand, I mean, I can't put a number to it, but yeah, you just got the feeling what I'm trying to say, right? There are so many things which can go wrong and only one thing which can go right, and they have to do everything right, then only this mission will be successful. Okay, so this the for this one, the lander, you can you just saw the lander solar panel got retracted, and now it is preparing to separate itself from the orbiter. There it goes. This is the orbiter. This orbiter has a service module in it basically, which has the propulsion and everything like that, and then the lander uh, will land onto the lunar surface. This is a very cool shot and animation they have made. So here we have. So as you can see, these thrusters are the attitude control thrusters. Okay, so for the landing part, what will happen is when it will reach around 100 meter above the surface, it will hover above the surface and trying to capture the images from the moon lunar surface. Okay, it will try to capture the images from the lunar surface in order to avoid any rocks or potentially hazardous landing site. So it will take the images, and according to that it will maneuver itself, whether it has to go right, left, or whatever, to avoid that hazardous site, and then it will land. So for landing also, after it has reached around 4 meter, it will shut down its engine and let it drop with the in accordance to the lunar gravity. That's what they are trying to do. So this will, you will see also right now, is here it is hovering, and now it shut down its engine, and uh, it just landed. So yeah, here the solar panels of the lander was deployed. So now you will see the complex part here. This is the drilling bit which will collect the samples. You just saw the it collected the samples from beneath the lunar surface, and then it will store it. Not store it. It actually basically right now you just saw this scooping mechanism just went outside from that thing, and now it will this from here it will scoop the material from the crust, and now the scooping material as well as that material which it got from the drill, it has stored into the ascender stage. Now the ascender is basically ascending from the lander to automatically dock with the orbiter. So this orbiter and this will basically you can see here they will attempt a communication link first, and for this one also this docking thing, it really is a KSP version of this thing, because for docking also they will be using claw. If you know what a claw is in KSP, they literally will be using a claw to grab that ascender stage, and yeah, that's the thing. This is the claw which you are seeing right now. See here, it just grabbed it, and now this thing the which you just saw, this thing here, not this one, this one, this what has happened is it has basically transferred the samples from the ascender stage to the return capsule. Okay, this is what has happened here, and now it has stored it properly. Now it will detach from the capsule, basically the orbiter, and now this orbiter will put itself and the return capsule into a earth intersection orbit. So it has left the lunar orbit now, and this is the return capsule here with the orbiter attached right now, and now it will detach the return capsule with the heat shield first, and yeah, this will, so this was what I was talking about. This was what I was talking about. So you can see here it will first enter the atmosphere, uh, and at around 60 kilometer it will again start rising and basically come out of the atmosphere around 100 to 140 kilometer, and then again it will land start basically descending through the atmosphere. So why is it why this thing is done? Because this is used to decrease the re-entry heating and re-entry effects of the pressure and everything, because at the speed at which it will enter the atmosphere will be around 11 kilometers per second, and to handle that it has used this kind of trajectory, because it actually increases the range of the landing zone. So the braking force is distributed for a long time. When a braking force is distributed over a long time, the braking force is reduced, the experienced basic force is reduced, and that's what is the function of the seat belts on your cars. It reduces the time of the force which gets onto you when the car brakes. Some similar to that is happening here. The braking will be done by the atmosphere, and it has increased by following this maneuver. It has increased the time in the atmosphere, and hence the braking force will be applied for a longer time, and hence it will be able to handle it properly, the re-entry effects and everything. Okay, so this is the what I was talking about, and obviously the re-entry, then the drogue chutes will deploy. Okay, re-entry is going on right now. Here we go, the drogue chutes and the main chute, and here we go, the landing. The obviously then the recovery team will come, and yeah, that's what I was talking about. That was I was what I was talking about. And what are we having in the chat? So guys, if you have any question, you can ask me. I do have some more interesting facts to share with you, and I'll be sharing that with you in a bit. So what happens if the drill doesn't work once it's Samuel Kirk? Okay, so if drill doesn't work, they will try to have all the samples from the crust only. That's what makes sense. Okay, the scooping mechanism should work, because the scooping isn't a complex thing. Just go and dig once and take the scooped layer. That's it. So scoop one should work if I am not wrong. But if drilling fails, they will compensate with the scooped one, okay, only. And if there are many things to fail, and if we ask if this fails or that fails, obviously the mission won't be successful fully. But I really hope this mission gets successful, because it will really add a great to the science community of this world. Yeah. If they do this large scale, then can they fit a human and a boom man on Mars? Okay, so thanks Justin Kim for subscribing. Okay, so um, yeah, if they do this on large scale, so for the Mars mission also, they have gone for an ambitious one, because for that also they have this orbiter, they have the lander, and they have the rover. Yeah, the Mars mission also is a very complex and ambitious one. They are aiming for ambition. The Chinese space agency is right now just aiming for ambitious mission. They just launched one in July this year, and then again this one here. So yeah, that's the thing. Are they okay, so Dylan says, are they expecting to find something specific? Specific in the sense, okay, let me have some thing here. If, guys, if you don't like this music or something like that, just please tell me, okay? I am trying to be, yeah, okay. So he says, are they expecting to find something specific? Yes, they are expecting to find really something specific, because the site which they have chosen for digging and collecting the samples is a site which has basically um, a younger one, 1.6 billion years old only, and it had volcanic eruptions on the surface. Why that moon surface was black, which I just the image just I which I showed you right now, that moon image which has some dark patches. So why is there dark patches there? Because of the volcanic eruptions there. There were some volcanic eruptions which caused that, you can say, the soil to become dark. And yeah, so obviously because that was a volcanic eruption, so they will be able to find something which is inside the moon, which has come to on the surface. So yeah, obviously that's a very cool thing to have. And obviously it is just 1.6 billion years old. It's not just, but yeah, it's relatively younger, and that's why the materials which this thing has won't be there in the Apollo program sample, because it was 3.4 billion years old, and there must be some wear and tear with the radiations and all those things. Yeah. Kalji says, what if it brings back alien, a virus? Okay, so let's see what else we have here. Nice. China drops rockets on the people. Okay, the Starlink satellites will. Okay, okay, okay. Mm, how can this still be done autonomously, but we don't have autonomous cars? Because the cars, for the autonomous cars, we need uh, the cars which are on the road also to cooperate with that car which is autonomous. But in the moon, there is nothing. Okay, no traffic, nothing, so it can just do whatever it wants to do. If we don't have any traffic and everything like that, on the earth also, for a single car, it can perform autonomously from one place to another. It can go just from one place to another without any problem. It's just that the traffic, which is, um, you can say, going with us, that causes the problem. Okay, so they will be leaving the landing legs on the moon. Yes, David, they will be leaving the lander on the moon. And what happens to the lander after it puts the sample into the return module? In the lander, they have some specific scientific instruments, and yeah, they are planning to do some science on this. But this mission, okay, this mission is basically needed to be done in just 14 days. Whatever I have just said you, it's not a very big timeline they have to achieve, but just 14 days they have to get this mission. They have the time to get this mission to a good success. Just 14 days, because after 14 days the spacecraft and this lander, okay, so lander will also be destroyed, because the lander is not, you can say, equipped with the technology to endure the harsh lunar night, which is very cold. That's the thing. Yes, we have the sound, but right now it's just a music playing here, and that's why I have muted that, and I'm trying to explain what I have, what information I have, and the people are people have known that this is camera is on the feed, and that's why they are just standing. Okay, okay, yeah, that's the thing. It's a really in short, it's a really very cool mission and really ambitious mission to be accomplished by China, because obviously they had great success with the moon. They had Chang'e 4, which was launched back in, I don't know the year, but it was successful and it landed in the far side of the moon. Okay, so if you don't know what's far side of the moon is, it is that size which does not faces the earth at all. Yeah, there is one side of the moon which does not faces the earth at all in its orbit. The earth also rotate and this moon also rotate, but the earth rotation and the moon rotation is basically synced in such a manner that it always faces one side of the moon towards the earth. The other side is never faced towards the earth, and we that's why we don't know much about the far side of the moon, and it was the first spacecraft to land on the far side of the moon. Why is it so difficult to land on the far side of the moon? It is because at the far side of the moon you can't communicate back with the earth. Whatever needs to be happen, it needs to happen fully autonomously, and they proved that technology. That's the thing. And guys, if you are just new to this channel, I'm just want to tell you that on this channel we host live streams of every rocket launch that happens in the space industry. So and all other space related videos too. So if you are a space fan, space nerd like me, and want to hear more about the rocket launches and just see them and enjoy them, and you can just subscribe to this channel, and hopefully you will be able to get the stuff which you would like to have. Yeah, that's thing. Okay, great mission, but littering the moon, it's where the deceptions left. David, they won't be littering the moon. I shouldn't say, because the Apollo era has already littered that part of the moon a lot. Whatever land they haven't, yeah, lander of the Apollo era is there. The rover is also there. They actually had their faces and all those toiletry material also uh, on the moon only. So yeah, that's the thing. So okay, so yeah, you just enjoy this stream right now, and I'll be there. Okay, the David says the dark side of the moon is where a Autobot ship crashed back in the 60s. Okay, cool. Okay, guys, I have this goal also for a microphone. As you know, this microphone quality, the audio quality basically is very bad here. And if you can support me, we have a goal here, and it will help the channel and help me to also to pursue what am I doing. If you like the content which I just served to you, you can always try to help me also. And yeah, give this stream a like right now, and that will also help this channel. So if you just like this stream, or that will also help. Okay, so yeah, I'll try to bring some other angles also. This is very boring to see just one angle right now here. I'll try to bring some other angles, so I'll just leave, not leave, I am here only, but trying to get some other angles for the feed. Okay, so just enjoy this one. Yeah, okay. When okay, so yeah, now let me just have this another angle for this one. um okay, 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 it's going. Yeah, we had also not a good one. Get a thank you, the Hopo Ronin. Nice work, so entertaining, good information. Keep it up. Thank you so much. And you can also help this channel by just clicking the subscribe button or liking this stream. And if you can, it will be so helpful if you can get me buy a good microphone for improving the stream. So we have this one. This is another view which I just found. I'll show to you, share with you basically. Okay, so it's not a good view, but okay, it's a really exposed one. Okay, let me find some other one then. Okay. I just got this one only here, just this one, and it is a flame trench view basically. I'll share with you, just a sec. And guys, don't worry, this feed basically, if they ever host it in Chinese or something like that, I'll try to have the captions generated in English, so don't worry with that. You will find everything on this channel only. So yeah. Okay, so here this one, and what is this? Yeah, okay, cool. This is one another view just I just found here. This is the flame trench view. As you can see here, this is where the smoke comes out from, and if I'm really very lucky, then this can go on this stream. This view can also go, and I can record this view during the launch, and I'll try to compile one video with everything. So yeah, it will be really interesting to have that view also. So yeah. Thanks for subscribing, Pariyasa. I'm really bad at pronouncing, so pardon me for that. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I really can't play this music, or because I think then I'll get a copyright claim or something like that. I don't know whether I have the permission or not, but yeah, that's the thing. So guys, let me just answer your questions only till then, and hopefully everything is cool. David says, what happens to the lander after it puts? I just answered that it remains there because it has it can do science for 14 days, but it remains there, and after that it does not have the capacity to endure the lunar night, so it will then, can say, destroyed, not destroyed, it will not break up or something like that, but it will stop functioning. Mission like that of Mars is the angel says the mission like that of Mars is incredibly ambitious. If it is successful, we'll have to collaborate with them. Yes. So for this mission also they have one international collaboration from ESA. ESA is supporting the ground, you can say, what the ground station. Basically, ESA is providing one ground station to track the trajectory and the rocket trajectory. Basically, yeah, that's the thing. And collaboration with China, basically the only problem with the agency for this one is like it is very secretive. Okay, I don't know, they claim, yeah, they obviously claim that they whatever findings they will acquire from the Mars or the Moon mission, they will make it public, but the research and everything, the findings are very secretive for this organization. And uh, yeah, it is not really open as that of NASA, because the stream which you are right now seeing also na, this is also really very rare to have. Because I mean, the stream, the China does not stream. Yeah, the Mars mission was also not streamed officially, and I actually got try to get the stream on the up on this channel, acquiring some bits and pieces from I don't know where I did that, but I, yeah. So the stream from the NASA is okay, we can get expect that, but from China, no, we can't. And if they do a stream, that means they are really confident with that mission and everything. They really believe that will go correctly, and the rocket or the spacecraft will not just blast off. And yeah, that's the thing. What happens to, okay, what is the mass of the final payload to the moon? Okay, the final payload to the moon, the everything, the four section, basically the whole spacecraft, the Chang'e 5 spacecraft, uh, is weighs around 8 tons, 8 metric tons, and that's what the capacity of this launch vehicle to put something to the lunar transfer orbit. Okay, so Victory says, congrats to the people of China for their long-going efforts creating a world lead in science and economics. All the nation of the people. Yes, congratulations to China, and hopefully, I really hope this mission is successful. What time it is launching? I have the countdown, but this countdown is right. Yeah, that's why it is secretive. They have not even released any countdown. Means what is the lift off time? And we have just speculations and unofficial sources which they with some claim. So I have that countdown here in front of you, but there could be some delay or something like that, so I'll try to update it as soon as I get some information or something like that, because actually officially they haven't uh, got us the lift off time. Yeah, put the subtitle in English, my friend would love to see it all without the secrecy. Yes, I'll put the subtitle direct, don't worry. Once they start speaking in Chinese or something like that, I'll have that subtitle on. It is actually ready to function, it's just waiting for them to speak, that's all. uh, what is the duration? Okay, so yeah, duration of the mission, the total mission duration is around 23 earth days. Okay, so 23, in just 23 earth days they have to go there to the moon, land, collect the samples, ascend to the lunar orbit, dock with the orbiter, get that sample back to the earth's trajectory, earth's atmosphere, and then land. All this thing has to happen in just 23 earth days. Wow, this is really very super fast service to the moon and back, right? Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's a really very ambitious thing they are doing, because there are so many parts and so many things which can go wrong. Only one thing they have tested for this mission, not one thing, but yeah, one thing they have tested. Yeah, the one thing they have tested is the re-entry capacity and the re-entry technology. They did launch one Chang'e T5 launch mission, which was supposed to basically test the re-entry technology they have, which if the mission or the capsule will survive the heat and everything like that. So yeah, they did test that. Other than that, they have the experience of the Chang'e 4 mission, the for landing onto the moon, but that mission lander and this lander is little bit different. So hope this also gets correctly placed onto the orbit and safely land onto the moon. Yes, Montag Fire, we do have a sound, but I am not playing that sound, but just a music. They are not commenting on anything. They're just a music which is being played, but I'm not opening it because of copyright and you know. Okay.
央视新闻直播继续，我是总台央视记者温俊义。
Okay, I'll
那
have the
我们呢
subtitles up
继续
now.
为大家带来今天晚上的陪你追嫦娥。现在呢，我在的位置啊，依然是在我们的观礼平台这里。大家顺着我手指的方向，能够看到现在呢，在12点钟我们来的时候啊，这个地方呢还是空无一人，只摆着2000多张的这个凳子。而现在我们看到这里边已经是人头攒动了。而在我们的身边呢，我们也能看到啊，现在 陆续的依然有观众在来到这里，准备从前方进入到观礼平台当中，去到我们的观礼平台，到那里去等待、见证一会儿发射的那一刻的到来。这个时间呢，到也是越来越近了。我们呢也走到跟前，一起和大家来聊一聊啊。这边我看也有挺多的观众，咱们不如就随机。你好，不好意思啊，我们是央视新闻。哎，不好意思，打扰了，可以采访一下吗？ 就这边的话，你好，
你要说什么？
我们是央视新闻的，然后今天呢现在正在做直播，想问一下您是从哪儿来的呀？
我是从北京来的。
从北京来的是吗？
对。
之前有这么近距离的去看过我们这个火箭的发射吗？
啊，我们在这个之前我去过酒泉，看过垂直转运。但是这么近距离的看嫦娥，看到文昌，然后看嫦娥还是第一次，我们特别激动，然后期待着嫦娥能够成功的 这个登上这个月球，然后也期待着它能够完成任务，完成自主月样采，这叫什么自主，这个什么采啊？对，自主的这个土壤的采集，然后呢，为我们将来下一步的这个载人登月吧，是叫载人登月吗？啊，能够为我们奠定一条好的基础。我们也希望经常到文昌来。
看来您对这个咱们这个航天这一块特别的还算是很了解的。您是一直都很喜欢吗？啊，
我们是北京电视台的。
踩到了同行，谢谢。这个因为这边的话，我们在直播。好，这其实挺有意思啊。就在这边呢，包括我们说我们在刚刚来到这里之后呢，遇到的有相关的一些这个小朋友们，也有一些年纪比较大的人。那同时呢，就在刚刚，因为大家的着装呢也都是比较便装为主啊，一不小心还踩到了自己的同行。当然，因为我们的证件呢现在是属于媒体证，是在园区之内，大多数地方可以去，但是没有办法进入到我们这边的厂区当中，所以呢，只能是在外围和大家稍微的来聊一聊。哟，这边呢也看到有很多的人在拍我们。你好，打扰一下，您是从哪里来的？
贵州，
从贵州来的。对。这是您那个第一次看这个发射？
第一次。
第一次在现场看。对。您是一直都很喜欢吗？还是？
很难得这个机会嘛，然后这个怎么说呢？很激动，也很珍惜这个机会。
那既然您都说了很激动、很珍惜这个机会，那我特别想问您知道今天发射的嫦娥它要完成的任务什么任务吗？
Yes,
反正我知道是一
guys,
个。
I will really appreciate if someone here from China can also translate something and tell me if the translation is cool or not. I know it's a bit off, but yeah, let's hope.
这次呢，嫦娥5号它会完成一个回的任务，就是落下去之后采样，然后再回来。好的，谢谢您。这边呢，我看到很多的这是同学们是吗？
对。
你们是从哪里来的？
我们是从北京来的。
都是从北京来的。
对。
你们这个我看都是统一的着装啊。
对。
这是。
Let me just answer some of your questions which you have just asked me. So what is the smoke? Jagan asked me what is the smoke coming from the left side? That's not a smoke. Okay, that's a smoke. But that's basically a venting which is happening from the cryogenic stages, because the the oxygen is basically stored at cryogenic temperature there. Hydrogen is also, but oxygen is basically stored at cryogenic temperature. And what I mean by cryogenic temperature? Cryogenic temperature means they're stored at -180 degrees Celsius and yeah. those temperatures, right? So because of that temperature, we obviously the room temperature or the surrounding temperature is not minus 180 degrees Celsius. So what will happen inside the tank, the liquid oxygen which it is there, it boils, because the obviously the oxygen wants to remain in a gaseous state, so it boils and creates a pressure inside the fuel tank. And when the pressure inside the fuel tank basically increases so much, then we have one bleeding valves from the tank, which basically bleeds off the pressure, and that's what you are seeing. The smoke is basically that bleeding valves are doing their work of maintaining the pressure inside the fuel tank. That's the thing.
同时呢，在这一边其实看到啊，整个的入场整体还是比较有序的。在我们从来了之后呢，也一直在观察很多的行人，他们呢其实都是有统一的带队的人员在带领他们前方的那个口处。Yeah. 他们会经历相对来说比较严格的，于老师您小心，咱们往前走啊。在前方呢，他会经历一个相对来说比较严格的一个安检，在此之后呢，再进入到我们的会场当中。整体来说的，这个安排以及是安保都是非常严格的。我们再往前走一走，其实呢，在这个位置啊，应该说相对来说，我们刚刚镜头也给到过，距离我们发射的塔架的位置还是比较近的。当然，它肯定是在我们3公里的安全范围之外。于老师，您往里走，这边呢，我们其实也看到啊，也有车辆正在经过，所以呢，相对来说，我们还是要注意，在这里要这个注意整体的一个安全的问题。当然
one thing which I would like you all to know that the China basically has you can say allows people to watch the launch from really close, and that's why they usually get some good close-up shots of the rockets. And yeah, and the Chinese live streams are like this only, and this stream is going on from like around it started around 8 hours or 9 hours ago, not 9 yeah 8-9 hours ago, and they were just like doing this only, streaming this thing. The commentary and everything was like this only. So yeah.
来的时候看到发射就是很激动的那种，现在是看时间长了是感觉很正常，因为这种平常态了。
您哪年来的这儿？
我14年来过这儿
，14年就来了。还记得那个能数得过来自己看了过多少回了吗？
数不清了，太多了。
您是东北的吧？东北哪儿的呀？
东北吉林长春的。
那个是经常能回家吗？还是多久能回一次家？
也不好说啊，就是1年能回2-3次家吧。
1年能回2-3次。平时住哪儿啊？
就在这里住。
就在这儿。对。是旁边那个基地这块吗？
那边。
啊，在那边。
对。
好，谢谢。其实这边呢，我们看啊，刚刚我们采到的有包括我们的同行，有包括来这里的同学们，也包括
企
事业单位的人。
mask。
刚才我们采到的，他们呢就等于是这里食堂的工作人员，在忙碌完之后，在包完那些包子之后呢，他们也是来到这里，进入到我们的场屏当中，一会儿将会去见证我们这样的一个比较重要的时刻。现在呢已经是来到了北京时间的3点25分，应该说呢，距离我们火箭发射的时间也是越来越近了。而在旁边呢，我们其实可以镜头稍微给一遍，这边我们来看一下，整体来说呢，向里走的这样一个状态呢，还是井然有序。大家呢也是在这个。
Guys, I do have a Patreon page. Link is down in the description. And you can support me over there also, and become a Patreon. Patreon also have some benefits and perks which I do, so that will help this channel a lot. So I request you, if you can, and then yeah, if you like this information which I am doing and like the work, then you can obviously do that. Yeah.
主持人在那里给大家讲述一些相关的一些事项，同时呢，也在给前来观看的观众们介绍着和长征5号和嫦娥5号相关的一些信息，也是呢对大家对在场的观众做一个相关的科普。其实想带大家来这里的原因呢，还是想回到刚才一个比较好的位置，再给大家来看一看我们即将要飞上太空的长5。 那这边呢，我们看陆续呢依然有观众正在来到我们的这个观礼平台这个位置。其实虽然大家呢基本都戴着口罩啊，但是从大家的心情的状态来看呢，每一个人都是非常的开心，非常的欣喜，甚至说有一些兴奋的。就是我自己也有点兴奋啊，对我而言，我也是第一次能够这么近距离的，不是单单只在电视上看一个平面的来看这样的一个发射的情况。那下面呢，就让我们把镜头慢慢的再推回到我们的长征5号运载火箭上，一会儿呢，它就将飞上太空。而现在呢，其实从我们的镜头当中呢，也能够看到啊，已经是一个准备就绪的状态。其实大家看啊，现在呢，整个的塔架，它呢，我们其实今天的直播呢，是从今天的16点就已经开始了。那个时候呢，其实火箭还是处在一个被塔架包裹的状态。从我们现在的镜头当中呢，不太能够看得出来。还是能看出来一点点的，就是这个下面呢，还似乎在冒着白色的烟雾，是有一点这个如在仙境的这种感觉的。其实呢，这是因为啊，它在之前呢，它加注了这个氢燃料以及是液氢和液氧的燃料。这个燃料呢，它是一个极低温的一个状态，所以呢，在加注的时候，加注之后呢，都会出现这个相应的这种情况。而在加注之后呢，它也就是一个不可逆的状态，将会在之后再按照它的计划。检查完成的计划之后呢，完成今天的飞行的任务。那我们刚刚呢说到了这个塔架现在是一个打开的状态，它其实在打开的过程当中呢，也是经历了3个顺序，先是呢最下边的第1连打开，之后呢是上边的第2连，最后才是中间的上面的第3连，最后呢才是中间的那个第2连它来进行打开的。其实这样的一个过程呢，也是因为最后打开第2连，也是因为呢为了保证我们这个火箭中间那个位置啊，能够相对来说更安全一些。其实今天的天气呢，应该说现在，整个来说还是要温和了很多，风也小了很多。就下午的时候呢，那会儿风很大，而且我们也是经历了几次的这种，短时的这种降雨啊，可以说那个时候其实我心里边还是有一点点紧张的。毕竟呢，虽然说对于我们这个870吨的火箭而言，可能这一点的风不算什么，但是总会担心万一到发射的时间，这个风变大了，我们该怎么办？但还好，其实现在呢，我们能看到啊，其实整个来说，现在的风力反倒是回到了一个比较稳定的状态，而且天儿呢也没有再有任何降雨的迹象。现在的温度呢，这边也是比较适宜的。我们所有来的这些观众们呢，也能看到啊，很多人也是选择穿了一个外套。毕竟呢，到晚上虽然说是在海南啊，在文昌，但是到晚上的时候呢，还是稍稍会有一点点凉的，何况是在这样一个空旷开阔的场地当中。火箭呢也，我们的镜头呢现在依然是给着我们的今天的主角，我们的长征5号。您好，打扰一下，您是从哪儿来的？
从北京来的。
从北京来的。
对。
那您是这个哪天过来的？
我们是今天
刚到，今天刚到，专门来看火箭发射是吧？
专门来看。
之前有看过吗？
之前没有。
对。您印象最深的一次发射是哪次？
应该是长5的第1次发射吧。
长5的第1次发射。
对。
那是什么时候还记得吗？
应该是
2016年11月。
对。您这记得是够清楚的。那您得讲讲了，为什么记忆这么深刻？
因为我的很多战友、很多朋友都从事这个工作。
哦，是吗？
对。
您是什么工作？
我们是做航天工作的。
您没做。那您是一直都一方面是因为自己的朋友们他们在从事这份工作，另一方面是自己也很喜欢这个，是吗？
对。对。
那这个您今天过来有什么想对长5说的吗？
长5，我们国家要发展壮大，长5必须离不开你。
为什么呀？
因为航天强国嘛，我们国家以前是失去海洋，不能再失去太空。长五是我们国家走向太空的必须的一个平台和工具。
好的，好，谢谢。其实刚刚呢，我们的这位到场的观众呢，他提到的说，这个对于我们发展太空来说呢，长五是必须的，确实是这样的。相对而言呢，长五它所要担负的任务要很重，包括我们现在这个探月的计划，这个嫦娥5号的发射，也包括在今年下半年的时候，当时发射的天问1号也是通过胖五来发射的。除此之外呢，还有未来的空间站相应的计划，也是要通过我们的长五来发射。所以呢，其实它在未来还要肩负起更多的重任。那时间慢慢临近，我们呢也期待着发射的那一刻。接下来呢，让我们继续把镜头还是给到我们的主角，还是给到我们的长征5号。好，
这是我们领导来台。
我们也希望啊，今天的发射能够圆满成功。我们在这里，在场坪这里，和所有的观众一起见证。
Okay. So this is a close-up view which we are getting, guys. Okay, let me just here we go. So this is a closer view which we are getting of the rocket, and we can see it's quite venting heavily, and yeah. So guys, I do have some cool information to share with you, some cool interesting facts about this mission. So this the total mission duration, as I have already told you, that it will be only 23 Earth days. So it will be a super fast express to the moon and back, with the soil and all the materials inside it, as well as this will basically it will be in direct trajectory towards the moon after the separation, and there will be a lunar orbit insertion in around 4 to 5 days. Okay.
这里呢都会瞬间变成大型的 party 现场。那即便我们看到现在已经是凌晨24号凌晨的3点多的时间了，按照平时来讲的话，我们应该是正在熟睡的状态。但是现在呢，在这片海滩上，我们依然看到人头攒动、欢声笑语，还能看到不停的人流在涌入。可以说，在这个时间段，能够来到这片海滩看发射的朋友们，都是忠实的航天迷。直播，我们在直播。等一下，你们都要看发射，对吧？哦，是。啊，你们是从哪儿来的呀？
从北京。
北京来的，然后是专门是为了来看这次发射。
是他们的家属。我们是家属。
家属。
对，我们就是我们的孩子表现都非常好。我们来，他们在发射。哦，
都
来看望他们。
他们在发射场。
哦，发射场，我们来看望他们。
哦，为这次这个嫦娥5号升空，这个默默地付出着自己的贡献。
是。
对，然后为什么会来这个沙滩看发射呢？
因为我们想给他们加油。
好的，那我们也预祝嫦娥5号能够发射成功。对，
来了好久，
特别好，特别好。其实，在这个沙滩上，我们看到很多航天迷在这里已经聚集起来了。其实我们是从早上的应该是从昨天晚上的9点就已经到达了希尔顿沙滩。当时呢，就已经看到了很多的长枪短炮的这个摄影装备已经架设起来了。可以说，越到临近发射点呢，
we can see some actually people around here and watching this rocket go up and to the moon and back also. It will be really cool to have this thing.
其实大家一定非常好奇，在这片沙滩上看到的嫦5究竟是什么样子的呢？大家也可以顺着我们摄影师老师的镜头来看一下嫦5现在的样子。大家可以看到啊，我右手边呢就是 澎湃的大海，一浪接一浪。再往后看，顺着我手指的方向，在不远处有一颗璀璨的明珠，在那里呢就是长5的发射台。嫦娥5号已经蓄势待发，等一下我们也会在这里一起见证它的腾空而起。我们再往这边看啊，在这片沙滩上，其实已经看到了很多这个搭起来的帐篷。这个不难猜啊，因为这次是在深夜发射，所以呢，很多朋友也是，准备的非常的周详，然后自己带了帐篷在这里，驻扎，就等于是从昨天下午就已经到达这里，扎了帐篷就，在这里跟朋友们聊聊天呀，一起聚餐呀，然后包括在前面我们可以看到，有的现在还在休息，有的呢，是围坐在一起，然后聊天。这样吧，我们可以找一些朋友们来采访一下，看看他们在长5发射前，来听听他们的对于长5发射的想法和心情，现在怎么样？来，你好。好。哎呀，正在休息哈。
And the rocket launch pad has been opened. And Xu Yansong, Director General of the Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization. Now, CGTN's Wu Lei is standing by for us at the launch site. Wu Lei, obviously final preparations there at the launch site. What is the mood there? What's happening now?
Exactly, Zhengshi. Right behind me, about 3 kilometers away, is China's most powerful carrier rocket, the Long March 5, is waiting for the final countdown from the launch director. As the launch window is set to be from 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. this morning, Beijing time. So the Long March 5 rocket will be launched very soon. It will lift China's lunar probe, lunar probe, the Chang'e 5 into Earth-Moon orbit. And so this is China's first lunar sample return mission. And this Long March 5 is it's a 5th mission for the rocket. So the rocket has been quite steady. And earlier I talked with Huang Bing, chief designer of the rocket, on the potential about the rocket's global cooperation in the market. Let's take a listen.
We are always open to sharing Long March 5 with the rest of the world. We have promoted it in other countries. Our application manual for it is also publicly released. Long March 5 is advanced in many aspects, especially in its carrying capacity. So we believe that it can really play an important role in future global space cooperation.
So after this launch, the Long March 5 rocket family will play a key role in China's deep space exploration. Zhongshi.
Well, China could be making history with this latest lunar mission. There are a lot of stakes riding on this mission. Tell us more about what makes this Chang'e 5 mission particularly special.
I talked to the spokesperson Pei Zhaoyu of this Chang'e 5 mission. He told us that if successful, this mission is expected to create a number of new records in China's space program. For instance, it will be the first time for the Chinese spacecraft to collect and drill lunar samples, and also the first time for the spacecraft to take off on the moon, to dock on the moon orbit, as well as package and bring back the moon samples. So there will be a lot of challenges for the Chinese space programs, and the Chinese scientists aim to bring about 2 kilograms of the lunar soil as well as rocks. So along with hundreds of domestic and foreign reporters, we are all holding our breath and waiting to witness this historical moment together. 钟师。
We're all waiting with breath that is bated. A lot of challenges. We'll be talking with our experts throughout the program about just how to conquer them. CZ-5's Wu Lei live for us at the launch site. Wu Lei, thanks so much. With a successful launch, the Chang'e 5 probe will be the first space mission to bring back moon rocks in decades. It is also China's first lunar sample return mission. Our Wang Chao tells us more about the technology behind it.
With a weight of over 8 metric tons, it takes a powerful rocket like the Long March 5 to send Chang'e into the space. If successful, the mission will make China the third country to have retrieved lunar samples, after the United States and the former Soviet Union. Once in the moon's orbit, the probe will separate into 2 parts. The orbiter and the re-entry module will remain stay in place, as the lander and ascender head for the moon. In order for a safe landing, a navigation system has been designed to help it avoid obstacles along the way. After touching down, the lander will drill 2 meters below the moon's surface. A robotic arm will extract roughly 2 kilograms of samples. This is some 6 times more than all previous samples ever collected. The limit is 4 kilograms. Previous lunar missions did a direct return of samples to Earth, but not this time with the Chang'e 5. Samples will be stored in the ascender, which will then dock with the orbiter. Then the samples will be transferred to the returner, waiting in orbit. If successful, it will be the first unmanned rendezvous, some 380,000 kilometers away from Earth. From there, the returner will detach from the orbiter to make the 5,000 kilometers journey back home. But it doesn't stop there. The mission is expected to perform escape re-entry, something like escaping stones on water. It will bounce off the upper atmosphere once to help deal with the high-velocity return. And in the bigger picture, all of this can be seen as a rehearsal for China's biggest missions of all, sending humans to the moon. Wang Qiao, CGTN.
The Long March 5 rocket is currently China's largest launch vehicle. It's been at the Wenchang launch site in Hainan for a week in preparation for the Chang'e 5 probe. Now let's find out more about the rocket itself.
It has not been easy for the Long March 5 to arrive at the launch center in South China's Hainan province. It was taken there from North China's Tianjin city.
The waves along the way were pretty big. The staff members check the rocket every day.
Okay. So, guys, you just saw it's a really ambitious mission, right? And I'm really excited for this, but I really want to share some facts with you. So after this spacecraft will reach the lunar orbit, then the whole spacecraft will remain in the orbit and will wait for the sun to rise at the landing site, and then the lander will separate and land into the near the landing site. Okay, that's the thing. And for the scooping one, means the sample which they will be having, it will be having scooping and drilling techniques to obtain the lunar samples, and the mission requirement is around 2 kg, which just said, and the max is 4 kg. But the thing is, they will be having 3/4 of the material from the scooping and 1/4 of the material from drilling. So yeah, that's the thing which they are planning to do. Okay, and yeah, that's the.
It can ensure high efficiency due to its low latitude location. China's aerospace authorities say the spacecraft launched from Wenchang have some 10% higher carrying capacity compared to those launched from other sites in the country. It will also be safer to conduct lunar missions there, as fallen objects will drop into the sea, helping to avoid the evacuation of local residents. Rockets can also be transported by sea, so there won't be any size limit for their components. And now, let's bring in our guests, Professor Yang Yuguang of the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation and Xu Yansong from the Asia-Pacific Space Cooperation Organization Gentlemen, I'm so happy to have you on today. Your expertise and analysis will be much appreciated in our special coverage. Professor Yang, I want to start with you. Let's talk about the Long March 5 rocket here. This is China's heavy lift rocket. It's larger in size, affectionately known.
It has a payload capacity of 23 tons to low Earth orbit. So yeah, it's really heavy.
Why do we need Long March 5 for this mission in particular?
Well, you see, Long March 5, together with the Long March 3A series, are used for launching spacecraft with very high altitude. You know that Chang'e 1 and Chang'e 2 are orbiters to the moon, and both have the mass of about 2 more tons. So the Long March 3A and Long March 3C are powerful enough to launch this kind of spacecraft. Well, for Chang'e 3 and 4, because both landers are much heavier with a mass about 3.78 tons, so only Long March 3B can launch these payloads into the Earth-Moon transfer orbit. Well, for this Chang'e 5 spacecraft, which has a mass about 8.2 tons, it is already exceeds the capability of Long March 3A series. So we don't have other choices. Only Long March 5 has the capability to launch so heavy payload to the lunar orbit. And you see that the Long March 5 have a capability of about 14 tons to the geosynchronous transfer orbit, while for an object to the moon will be about 8.3 tons. So this is already powerful enough for this spacecraft.
It has a lot to do with the weight of what you're carrying into this space. Mr. Xu, how does the Long March 5 compare with other heavy lift rockets that China has?
Well, China has the only heavy lifting launch vehicle would be Long March 5, and currently we're developing a new generation launch vehicle. But in comparison with the international launch vehicles, we do have Ariane 5 and Falcon Heavy, which are comparative to the Long March 5. Each have different characters. The Falcon Heavy is using a single rocket engine, but with varieties of numbers. And the Ariane 5 is using solid propellant boosters, as well as liquid kerosene, and liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen as a core. So the core is similar to Ariane 5, and similar to that, we also have the shipment, as the video have just mentioned, from Tianjin to Haikou but also in the European Ariane 5, they're using ships to ship the rocket to the launch site in French Guiana. So there are many similarities, but also there are big differences in terms of payload capacities, in terms of fuels and rocket configurations.
These rockets you mentioned, they vary and differ in size and in shape, and sometimes in the number of boosters they have. Is there a consensus maybe on the reliability of a particular rocket?
Well, each rocket needs to have experiences, number of launches that counts in your account. For example, the Long March 5 is only the number 5 time for its launch, but the Arianes and the Falcons has many in their logbook already launched, and success and failures. So they have more experiences and expertise in the rocket configuration, rocket designs and details, and also softwares. So the Long March 5 is a new rocket, still relatively new, and so we need to have accumulation of number of launches to further increase its reliability.
All right, thank you so much. The Chang'e 5 mission is about to make China the first nation to collect lunar soil and rock samples in over 40 years. But what's the craft itself like, and what challenges does the mission face? For this, our reporter Dong Xue has the details.
No spacecraft has brought back moon rock samples to Earth since the last Soviet mission in 1976. China's Chang'e 5 will soon take on the challenge. The craft mission is to collect samples from Mount Romaker region on near side of the moon and bring them back. The 8.2 metric ton Chang'e 5 is comprised of 4 modules: a lander, ascender, orbiter, and returner. After launching, Chang'e 5 will arrive at the moon after about 3 days. Once it enters lunar orbit, the lander and ascender combination will separate and descend close to the Mount Romaker. This is a 1,300-meter high volcanic complex in the moon's northern region, made up of vast dark lava plains. Over the course of 14 days, the lander's robotic arm will scoop up surface samples and a drill will retrieve cores down to 2 meters. Scientists are hoping to collect 2 kilograms of material. However, analysts say the mission is technically challenging and many things could go wrong. The lander could crash land or top over, and the samples could escape from their canisters along the way. The descent and ascent will take place over 1 lunar day, which is equivalent to around 14 Earth days. This brings up the question of how to avoid the extreme overnight temperatures that could damage electronics. The deputy chief designer of China's lunar exploration program says other challenges include the sampling and following stages, because gravity on the moon is about only 1/6 of the Earth's. Under such circumstances, the packaging of samples becomes a key issue which the mission has never tried before.
The Chinese lunar exploration program is an ongoing series of robotic missions. Its nickname, Chang'e, comes after...
Guys, I would like to interrupt here. Like, I know what is going on in the chat, so please be kind to every nation and everything, because they have made the mission to the moon, and they are literally going to the moon now and collecting the samples. So it's not a joke, right? So it's okay. It's okay. It's just science and everything. Just cool down and enjoy the launch. That's it.
In 2007, China launched the Chang'e 1 satellite. After spending 16 months in orbit, the satellite successfully concluded its mission with a controlled crash into the lunar surface. The Chang'e 1 also obtained a full image of the surface of the moon. The Chang'e 2 was sent into the moon's orbit in 2010. As NASA notes, this marked the first time a Chinese lunar probe directly entered the Earth-Moon transfer orbit without circling the Earth first. It captured the world's first full lunar map with a spatial resolution of 7 meters, showing more details of the moon's surface. The second phase is to achieve soft landing on the moon and automatic inspection. The Chang'e 3 was launched in 2013. It carried with it an unmanned rover called Yutu, or Jade Rabbit, which in folklore was Chang'e's pet. It was the first soft landing on the moon since 1976, making China only the 3rd country to achieve the feat after the US and the former Soviet Union. Next up, the Chang'e 4 mission started in May 2018, when relay satellite Queqiao was propelled into orbit. It was sent to set up a communication link between Earth and the upcoming Chang'e 4 lunar probe. It stayed in a geosynchronous orbit on the far side of the moon. 7 months later, Chang'e 4 with a lander and a rover went into space. After a month-long journey, the probe landed on the far side of the moon, which is never visible from Earth, and China became the first country ever to manage the feat. The Yutu 2 rover carried multiple equipment working as a CT scanner. It obtained deep lunar materials directly through on-site exploration, revealing the complex geological evolution on the moon. Chinese President Xi Jinping congratulated the country's scientists on this historic achievement.
太空探索永无止境，希望广大科技工作者、航天工作者
There is no end to space exploration. our country's scientists and engineers should ride on the wave of the Chang'e 4 mission to achieve the ultimate goal of China's lunar program. You should make more efforts to push forward the international aerospace exploration and bring more Chinese wisdom and power to the
let's just focus on the stream and let's respect every nation. It's just science, guys. Respect science. Just that's it. Nothing. We are scientists and we are space nerds, right? They are just scientists and we are space nerds. Sorry, and we just want to go and see that. So it's okay. Just respect every nation and everything, and enjoy this launch.
Continue our discussion with my guests, Professor Yang Yuguang and Mr.
Manat saying Chang'e does not mean moon, but it's a goddess of moon in China. That's the name. Yeah.
If you look at China's lunar program in general, this program was inaugurated back in 2004, and now 16 years later, we're sending the Chang'e 5 probe to collect samples and return them from the moon. Professor Yang, how would you categorize China's achievements in the last 16 years, especially regarding the previous 4 Chang'e missions?
Well, to discuss this question, we should be aware that China is still a developing country. Although we've already been a very big country in space field, we have a very large-scale space industry, and we achieved the top 1 launch times this year and last year. But still, for a developing country, we still have only limited goal in this kind of scientific research. So you see, Chang'e 1 and Chang'e 2 use the very practical Dongfang 3 satellite platforms as a base. So it used only a little money to develop these kind of projects and achieve the goal of orbiting the moon. In this procedure, we must.
And guys, if you have any questions or something related to the mission and everything, you can just write it and I'll try to answer. And please, guys, if you can, it will really help if you can support this channel on the Patreon. Link is down in the description, or you can help me buy a microphone. You know the audio quality is really crappy, so yeah, it will be really appreciated. Or no, if you can't do that, then just like the stream and subscribe. That will also help this channel. So yeah.
100 meters per second. So landing on the moon need a very large-scale propulsion system and slim down the spacecraft and land on the surface, which have a very large rapid speed. So you see there is a the distance between the Earth and the moon is more than 380,000 kilometers. So there is a delay between the telemetry, the data link. So the spacecraft should be highly autonomous. So we master this soft landing technology. You see these 3 missions made a very good base for this Chang'e 5 mission. And also we have another particular mission called the Chang'e 5 T1. With this mission, we master the technology for re-entry capital to return from the moon to the Earth with the speed approaching the second cosmic velocity, and also the technology of skip re-entry. So this is also very particular in our plans, because we need to land on the Inner Mongolia. Which is necessary to use the skip re-entry. So you see these projects before are very important.
And yeah, guys, if you can't do support in the Patreon, the super chat is enabled. So yeah, microphone, I really need one. So yeah, it will be appreciated.
Well, Mr. Xu, what do you think of these achievements in the past 16 years?
Well, I was there at the beginning when we were drafting this plan of orbiting, landing and sample return. This is certainly a technological demonstration of the capacities and capabilities we have. And now, after the successful orbiting and landing, we have been very innovative. Because the orbiting, the Chang'e 1 and Chang'e 2.
Some people say that Apollo is fake, but I would like to tell you one thing for that. For faking the Apollo, it will require more effort rather than just going it and do it. So yeah, so obviously the people behind that won't be faking it, because it would require more effort. And that's not my word, that's the Neil deGrasse Tyson words. So yeah, it was not faked and everything was recorded and documented, and yeah, we have the moon rocks also. So
based on the success of Chang'e 3. So Chang'e 5 is with a sample return mission will also be very.
Samuel, you can super chat. Yes, you can super chat on YouTube. We have that dollar sign there. In the bottom right corner, you can do the super chat if you want to do from there.
Forward to more innovative ideas of Chang'e 6 mission, which could be on the polar region or could be a very open project for international cooperation.
It is a very creative project mission, as you mentioned, but one that's with many, many challenges to come. Bear with me here on our program. We'll be coming back and talk about the challenges also later on. In China's aerospace industry is a hotbed for young talent. In particular, a growing number of female engineers are playing an increasingly important role in the missions. CGTN's Wu Lei met with a female assistant engineer who participated in the Chang'e 5 lunar mission at the Wenchang spacecraft launch site. Here is her story.
它是一个很复杂的任务，而且它带有了嫦娥奔月这种古代神话一样的浪漫色彩。之前总觉得这一类的工作都是特别高端、特别高大上，但是我们想象中的这些其实都是由这些很基础的工作构成的。
Okay, so I don't know whether I can have this here, but yeah, guys, if you have questions, I'm here to do and answer you, of course. So just ask me anything and I'll try to answer if I have the answers. Anything else which I'm missing for this mission which I would like to tell? I don't think so. Other things will be very technical, because then you won't understand, because those things require some whole video to make and try to understand. So yeah, better not to touch that thing. But what I can do is yes, John, China is proving itself, its technology, and the entire industry is stabbing at the idea of remote mining. Yes, remote mining is the asteroid mining. Okay, so asteroid mining, yes, we can talk about that. The asteroid mining is basically a thing which people are really looking forward to, because the world's first trillionaire will be an asteroid miner. Because there are unlimited supply of resources in space, and we just need to know how to harvest them and bring that back to Earth economically. That's the thing, and we do have the technologies to basically drill that and get the stuff back to Earth, but only thing is it's not economical. That's the reason. Once we find a way to make that transfer and taking that back to Earth economical, then yeah, asteroid mining will become really a thing and people will start mining that.
But other pressing issues took center stage. Now, NASA's goal to return to the moon is still within reach, as John Zarella explains.
Picking up some dust. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Tranquility Base here.
Okay, yeah, so NASA's goal is to, yes, there is NASA's Artemis program is also there, guys, which is scheduled to launch again some astronauts to the moon, and the first woman astronaut also to the moon by 2024. But the timeline, the 2024 date could very likely be slipped, and we can see some other date for
and leave our footprint.
Launch.
We will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars.
The plan is ambitious. Jim Bridenstine, who heads the U.S. space agency NASA, says this time it's far more than a quick round trip.
I don't like using the word that we're going back to the moon. We're not. We're going forward to the moon. We're doing it in a way that's never been done before.
The idea is to make landers, rovers, spacecraft all have access to the moon over and over. NASA, its partner nations, and commercial companies would create an architecture revolving around a central hub.
We need every part of the architecture between Earth and the moon to be reusable. We need the launchers to be reusable. We need the tugs that go from Earth orbit to lunar orbit to be reusable. We need the gateway.
The gateway is the hub, a small $2.7 billion station orbiting the moon It would serve to test new technologies, provide easier access to the moon for landers and
Yes,
astronauts to come and go.
Yitong, you are right.
NASA has
Helium-3 is there in abundance in the moon, and people are looking for this. Oh, Starship, the Dynetics moon lander, and
Get to
Boeing
the South Pole of the moon by
Blue
2024,
Origin
landing
study.
the first American woman and the next man.
Ambitious? That might be an understatement. NASA's massive new deep space rocket called the SLS has yet to fly. And landers to bring the astronauts to and from the moon's surface? They're just concepts. There are other flies in the ointment, too. Administrator Bridenstine says he will not stay at NASA after the next administration takes over in January. And the next NASA chief may have different priorities and marching orders than getting to the moon in 4 years. John Zarella, CGTN.
Exactly. I really love Jim Bridenstine because he has done so many things for NASA and pushing the NASA funding and everything. So,
at
yeah.
Brown University. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we just heard there the ambitious Artemis program by NASA to return to the moon in 4 years. In your view, how likely is it to succeed?
Well, I think the Artemis program will succeed. If you had asked me in the 1960s...
So guys, if you are new to this channel, just wanted to tell you we host live streams of every rocket launch that happens in the space industries and other space related videos also. Like I have one up on my channel on explaining the Delta IV heavy ignition sequence. So it's a very interesting thing. You can see that and subscribe if you are a space nerd like me and would like to see the rocket launches with me explaining all the stuffs. And yeah,
the pandemic. So what's the appetite for space exploration?
I think space exploration in the United States is one of the key topics that everybody supports. It's very bipartisan support for space. Everybody remembers, of course, Neil Armstrong landing on the moon, all the successes of the multiple Apollo missions, scientific expeditions to the moon. And indeed, this is something that will continue under any administration because it's very bipartisan support. And China is doing a great job here in terms of their first sample return mission. This is incredible. We haven't been returning samples for 44 years, and we have many scientific questions which the Chang'e 5 mission is going to help us answer. This is really exciting opportunity, and we really appreciate China's efforts in this area.
Last month, the U.S. also signed the Artemis Accords with several nations. These are ostensibly guidelines for nations who want to cooperate with NASA on the moon. But critics argue differently, saying the U.S. is trying to control space resources. Is that fair?
I don't think it's fair at all. I think the Artemis Accords are very inclusive, and I'm confident in the future with future administrations and as we move forward that hopefully China can be involved as well. And science is very international. Space exploration is very international. It's very expensive. It requires a lot of efforts and also teamwork and very, multiple ideas about how to accomplish things. And I think that the future, international collaboration and cooperation is the way to go.
All right, and we look forward to that. Professor James Hitt, we thank you so much for your time. Well, that's it for me for now. Gerald Tan here in Washington, D.C. Let's go back to Chang'e in Beijing and our continued coverage of the Chang'e 5 lunar mission.
Wow.
Gerald, thanks so much for that report. We were showing you live pictures from the launch site in Wenchang in Hainan province. As you can see, all seems to be ready for that rocket to launch. That is a Long March 5 rocket. We expect it to be launched at 12 seconds past 4:30 Beijing time, which is less than 20 minutes away. We're keeping a close watch for you, and we'll bring you all the latest from the launch site there in Wenchang. Keep it right here on CGTN. All right, meanwhile, Russia is preparing for the next phase of its own lunar program, and to talk us through the country's latest efforts to explore the moon, let's talk to our correspondent Julia Chapman. Julia, it seems Russia has some rather ambitious goals. What can you tell us?
So actually, they are covering for each nations which
It
are
does indeed,
aiming
that's
for
right.
moon.
The next phase of Russia's lunar exploration program is due to get underway next year. If everything goes according to plan, a spacecraft will launch from Russia on October 1st, 2021, and that will be the first of 3 planned missions to the moon, all unmanned, but very similar to what China is doing at the moment. The next one would arrive on the moon and take samples of the moon, bringing them back to Earth if everything goes well. And of course, Russia has a long history of lunar exploration. The Soviet Union was, of course, the first country to carry out both a hard and soft landing on the moon, only to be eclipsed by the United States when the US first put man on the moon a decade after Russia got there first. So in recent years, Russia has been turning its attention to other projects in space. In recent years, projects like the International Space Station have taken priority, and lunar exploration has been somewhat eclipsed. But Russia's space agency Roscosmos has big plans. It aims to put cosmonauts on the moon from 2030 and ultimately create a permanent base there. And although it requires significant funding, scientists insist the project is worthwhile.
As for what we gain from studying the moon, there have been arguments, there still are. Some think that there isn't a clear scientific goal, but actually there is. It's just not obvious to the wider public. After completing these tasks,
The thing is, China is also aiming to land their land humans basically onto the moon by 2030. Russia is also doing that, and NASA is also doing that. So it will be really cool and really basically a thing if they can collaborate, if all the 3 nations can collaborate and provide fundings and everything to make that happen. Because for a single nation to do that, it will really cost a huge amount of money, and I don't think so it will be beneficial to basically invest in that by a single nation. So yeah, collaboration could be a thing.
And that's going to be in conjunction with the European Space Agency, but Russia is certainly looking
it
for other
contains a propulsion module. The orbiter is basically a propulsion module. That's a service module it has, and it only takes the orbit, basically takes it into a lunar orbit. The lunar orbit injection burn is done by the orbiter itself. So yeah, it has some propulsion module.
To create a lunar data research center, and that will have hubs in both China and in Russia. So Russia's certainly looking for other partners, and China, with its new lunar exploration programs, certainly looks like an opportune candidate.
Julia, thanks so much for that report. And now for further analysis, I want to go to Mark Makorian, Senior Advisor for Science and Exploration at the European Space Agency. Thank you so much for making time for us.
It will take around 4 to 5 days for this thing to arrive at the moon, Manoj.
What do you think is in store for Europe in terms of lunar exploration in particular?
Well, it's a very exciting night for Europe as much as it is for China, because we're actually supporting the Chang'e 5 mission tonight with our deep space tracking networks. But beyond that, our real programs at the moment, at least, are with NASA in the US and Roscosmos in Russia. And we're already building hardware for going back to the moon. It's called the European Service Module, which will help take humans back to the moon in the next few years. And we're also starting now, we've put the contracts out to build components, key modules of the Gateway, the small space station that will be in orbit around the moon and will be the way of getting to the surface of the moon. So we'll be sending astronauts there to the Gateway to do science. We also have robotic missions, which will be going to enable communications, navigation, and transportation to the Gateway and to the surface of the moon. And we're also working on science and technology, which will help us extract, for example, water, oxygen, and metals from the surface of the moon, resources in situ, which we can use then to support a future human base, for example.
Mr. Makorian, I was talking with my guests here in our studio who said that in the future lunar probes, in Chang'e missions in the future, there could be more international cooperation. Would Europe be interested in working with China, not just with the lunar probes, the Chang'e missions, but also in other aspects of space exploration?
Well, that's a very good question. And in fact, we already have collaborations with China from the European Space Agency. Some of our astronauts have traveled to train with Chinese astronauts, and there's the possibility of European astronauts perhaps flying to the next Chinese space station. We're involved in collaborations on Earth observation, looking down at resources on the planet Earth. And currently, for science, we're building a new satellite to investigate what we call the magnetosphere, the near-Earth environment where the particles from the sun hit the magnetic field of the Earth. That's a joint mission between China and ESA called SMILE. And of course, we're very interested in the south pole of the moon, as many people are, perhaps a destination for Chang'e 6, because that's where ice may live still today, unaffected by sunlight, hiding in the dark craters at the south pole of the moon. And of course, that would be vital for a future human base. So we're already working with China and certainly very interested in exploring new opportunities.
And we look forward to more cooperation in the future. That's Mark McCorian, Senior Advisor for Science and Exploration at the European Space Agency.
ISRO, Manat Singh, actually the thing is, it will be really difficult to scale it down because whatever they have done is I think is a minimum requirement, although something can be there, but 6 tons will be the then the payload weight, and that also will not be able to handle by the GSLV. Although ISRO has plans to make one heavy lift launch vehicle, and once we have that, so they can upgrade their ambitions.
In the previous introduction, it already mentioned the Lunar 24 mission, which is the last sample return from the moon since 1976. So you see that the former Soviet Union.
So guys, we are just T-minus 15 minutes from the launch, and it is really happening, and I'm really very excited about this thing.
Control center that 15 minutes until launch.
Wow.
We're hearing instructions coming.
So Krishi Bajaj says what type of fuel it has. It does not have hypergolic fuel. It has liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen in the first and the second stage. But in the boosters, we have RP1, the rocket grade kerosene, as well as the oxygen. So yeah, we have 2 types of fuel in this rocket.
So you see, these missions choose a relatively simple method. The probe directly ascend from the lunar surface and directly come back to the Earth. So that is the reason it only brings so little samples to the Earth. So this time, to bring more samples to the Earth, we choose a different method. Lunar orbit rendezvous. So you see, because the re-entry capsule needs some heating shield to protect it from the high friction, the heat from the friction with the atmosphere. So these kind of measures are not necessary for the sampling on the lunar surface. Well, on the lunar surface, there are different considerations. So the spacecraft of the re-entry capsule and the ascender are quite different. We choose a lunar orbit rendezvous, which is much complex than the former Soviet Union missions, and this is very similar to the Apollo programs. You can recognize the lander and the ascender as the descent pad and the ascending pad of the lunar module of the Apollo spaceship. You can recognize that the orbiter as the service module of the Apollo spaceship. And
the second cam which you are seeing right now is, I think, is the cam which oh yes, here we go. Umbilical support,
is quite similar to the Apollo program, very complex. And to my understanding, the most challenging part will be the lunar orbit rendezvous. As the previous introduction, it will be the first manned lunar orbit rendezvous and docking. No one has done this before. It is quite challenging, and because you see, to rendezvous and docking near the Earth, we have all kinds of support. We can have ground stations, we have data relay satellites, and we have the GNSS, or the navigation satellite system, to support these kind of missions. But for the docking and rendezvous near the moon, we don't have so much support. We only mainly depends on the spacecraft itself and limited support from the ground. So this is also very complex and really tough.
Exactly. There are so many things which is so difficult for in this mission. Basically, we have so many deployment of the solar panel deployment and then retraction. There are so many things which can go wrong for this mission. I'm again repeating this thing, and seriously, this is really very ambitious mission. I'm again repeating, and because this is, I mean, there are so many things I can imagine also which can go wrong, but only one thing which can go right, and they have to achieve that. So kudos to them.
Precisely because of all of those firsts that China is endeavoring to achieve, of all of those challenges. And much of the tension from people here in China and abroad will be focused on how China will rise up to the challenge.
Super chat feature is enabled. If you want to support this channel and buy me a microphone, you can do that. And otherwise, just like the stream and subscribe. That will also help.
Well, I think this is a clear demonstration of technologies for preparation of human missions. There in the world, we do have two different mentalities. One is for robotic missions to explore outer space. Another intention is to humanly explore outer space. We saw just now the programs of our Artemis, or the Gateway, the US has called it. The concept is to build a lunar space station where it will orbit the moon, and then they will have multiple missions of sample return to the Gateway, and then the samples will be selected and filtered by human missions, and then human mission will bring the samples back to the Earth. That is the configuration of the Gateway. What we're doing is to demonstrate the capability of going back to the moon, bring samples back to Earth, and these samples can be replaced by human, so that in the future we can enlarge or blow up this model and achieve a human mission. So this is something that we could look forward to in this Chang'e 5 mission.
Let's briefly talk about the whole process here, because that will be important for our viewers to understand. We're also hearing from the ground command center that it's now 10 minutes away from the launch. We're keeping a close watch on that as well. So in a nutshell, we'll be bringing in soil and rock samples from the moon. How do we do that? So this probe, the spacecraft, will be made up of 4 components. There will be a lander, there will be an ascender,
10-minute standby.
there will be a service module or an orbiter that will be waiting for the ascender after it collects the samples, and then that return capsule that basically hauls back everything it collects from the moon and return to Earth.
I don't know, did they say they had a hold for 10 minutes?
And the steps connecting each of them. What do we know about potential risks? What do we know about where it could go well, where it could go wrong, because we haven't done that before? This will be the very first time, Professor.
Well, in fact, every procedure in this mission will be very challenging and risky, although we've already done that before. For instance, the Long March 5 need to send the spacecraft to the Earth-Moon transfer orbit. During this process, we need 2 to 3 mid-course correction, because you see the accuracy of the rockets is not enough for the spacecraft. The orbit insertion near the moon will be very critical, so we need the mid-course correction by a very accurate mirror of the orbit, and then do this.
Thank you so much, Labrat, for that $7 super chat, super sticker basically. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that, and I'll update that into the donation goal. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
To the moon, and then
really helps this channel to stay and make awesome content like this.
The lander and the ascender and the lunar module. So the separation is also a very critical point for this mission. And the landing on the moon, you see, always be very dangerous. And Israel and India has just suffered failure not very long ago. So sampling on the moon is also very difficult, because you see the lunar surface, the environment is very crucial. The temperature is very high under the sunshine is very low and in the shadows, we must consider and also consider the influence of the dust on the moon to the spacecraft. And the sampling, as we see, we need to drill 2 meters under the ground, and also we have a scoop to scoop up the reckless to the spacecraft. And the ascender, the package is also very, very important because the leakage, any leakage could cause the loss of the samples. So the package must have a very complete sealing and be done properly. And ascending itself is also very challenging. You see, we never done this before to lift off from another celestial body. The problem is that because of there are always errors, so the coordinate of the landing site, we don't know that because we need to measure that after landing. And only after this, we can have the coordinate of the where we lift off, and also the angles of the slope also have influence to this position. So all kind of influences as factors, we must consider that carefully for this liftoff. And also, as I mentioned, the rendezvous itself is near the cislunar space is the most difficult part, as from my point of view. And also, the return itself is quite difficult.
Although we're witnessing the rocket launch today, what will be more challenging will be what happens on the moon after that lander makes itself on that moon. And all of this will have to happen in the time frame of 1 lunar day. That's 14 days on Earth. Do we have to worry about that time frame to get all of this accomplished, Mr. Xu?
Well, I think timing is very important in this mission. We also, Professor Yang has just mentioned, there are many challenges in the details, in the landing and the ascending. This particular mission is different from Chang'e 3 and Chang'e 4 landing mission because this has an ascender which has a higher gravity center of gravity, which means it might be tumbling if the surface is not flat. So the autonomous terrain selection system and validation system is very important. So once, as you mentioned, the timing of this mission, you have to validate the landing site by the spacecraft itself during its orbiting to the lunar surface, and then make a final decision on the landing site. There are 3 or 4 landing sites that can be chosen from, and then you will have this landing. Once it's successful on a flat base, you will have another challenge of ascending these samples.
It's just 4 minutes now. 4 minutes 43 seconds and counting, and I'm really excited now. Seriously.
Without navigation systems, without any assistance on the ground. So these are very challenging and very time demanding and precision demanding mission.
It looks like we're less than 5 minutes away from the launch of that rocket. We'll take you to the Wenchang launch site as that happens, so make sure you keep it with us right here on CGTN. Let's talk about the part where the lander is responsible for, for the digging and for the collecting and the sampling. It will do so with robotic arms. Is that process fully automated? Is there any interference from, let's say, humans on Earth for that process?
There are 2 instruments that we brought to the lander. One is the visible and near infrared camera that can help, as Professor Yang mentioned, the scooping of samples on the lunar surface. Another one is a radar, a penetrating radar that can penetrate the ground, that can tell the character of the ground and the hardness and the softness of the ground, so that the drill can drill 2 meters into the ground and bring samples back. So there are 2 different methods of collecting samples at the same time. We do bring these 2 instruments on board. We might analyze on the ground by these parameters and informations prior, during, and after the drill.
All right, it looks like we're just moments away from the launch of that rocket. This is a Long March 5 rocket. We're now 3 minutes away from the launch here. When we talk about what's going to happen on the moon
okay, so
later
these are the umbilicals which have retracted. I mean, they must be the fuels and the air conditioning umbilicals. fuel pipings and air conditioning. The air conditioning I think is still on for the fairing, and it will be retracted once it will lift off. So we are now 2 minutes 30 seconds from the lift off, and it is really happening, guys. I'm really hopeful for this mission, and fingers crossed, let's just this happens correctly and this mission is successful. Waiting for the Chang'e 5 to get back the lunar surface soil.
And docking, one side from the ascender and one side from the orbiter. With this instrument, we can help the two spacecraft to measure the distance from each other and also measure the angles. And then from the final step, the two spacecraft should docking autonomously with the docking mechanism, which is quite different from the mechanism
Philip,
they use.
I don't know whether it's December 6 or not, but yeah, there is one a Japan spacecraft which will be throwing back the asteroid samples, and the Hayabusa was the name of the spacecraft. Yeah. So we have now the launch tower.
Onboard computer will also have the control of all the critical functions.
Professor Yang, that's the platform, that's the pad opening up to release the rocket, is it?
Yes, we can see that all the rotational platforms has already been opened, and only a few connections are still remain. So we can see it's going to launch,
indicating that the final preparation, the very final touches are now being done to the rocket.
You can see there's still a wire connected to the vehicle. That is a wire to have the measures.
1 minute countdown
1 minute,
till
guys.
launch.
It's happening. Wow. Godspeed China, and I really hope this mission is successful.
In Hainan province, where the Long March 5 rocket is getting ready to lift off. This is the Chang'e 5 mission that will endeavor to bring back soil and rock samples from the moon. 30 seconds till launch.
20 seconds. Okay. So we have that countdown there.
20 seconds now.
15 seconds. 14. 13,
As you can see,
12,
the countdown
11,
on the screen. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
Ignition. And lift off of the Long March 5 rocket carrying the Chang'e 5 spacecraft to the moon and back. Wow. Just enjoy this view, guys. Wow. For once I thought it is not lifting off, but yeah.
Personnel on the ground reporting that the remote sensing data indicate that the flight is going smoothly. Why do we need those data?
Yeah, it's guys, it's going nominally now, and here we have the onboard camera. Wow.
Orbits and the speed and the altitude, so to keep track on the normality.
It's happening, guys. I'm really so excited for this.
And we should also notice that the rocket is not flying straight up. It's going sideways. There's a little turn.
It's called pitch over.
Pitch over.
Yes. So the first critical step will be after the tower is cleared, will be the pitch over to the so we call the launch direction. With this direction, we can determine the orbital plane.
And the next event which is coming up is the booster separation. Obviously the vehicle will pass through Mexico, but I don't think we will hear some call outs for that. But yeah, the booster separation we will be able to see.
Of the thrust during the liftoff. So on this stage, mainly the thrust is from the 4 boosters. And after pitch over, the next critical step will be the separation of these 4 boosters.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And we keep hearing that the monitoring and
thanks to
command
Guo, if I am not wrong. Thanks for $2 super chat. Really helps this channel. Thank you so much for your help.
Off this rocket, and then a few minutes into its flight, we'll see the boosters come off the rocket, and you're looking at the pictures being captured by a
Exactly.
camera
So
just
guys,
attached to the
right now,
body
as you can see,
of the
that
rocket.
plume is
So
also
that's
expanding and it's totally nominal.
of the boosters
This is the
there.
second stage
There are
camera,
a
if I'm
total of
not wrong.
4 boosters on the body of the rocket. They will all come off later in the flight and allow the separation of the first and second stage rockets.
So each of the booster has 2 engines, so total of 8 engines on the booster, and also engines on the core stage.
10 engines
so
total.
the boosters are composed by
Wow, see
liquid
the
kerosene.
onboard cameraman, the plume is expanding so well, and it is totally expected because the atmosphere is getting thinner and thinner, and that's why the exhaust can take much area, and that's why you can see this. Now the next event should be the booster separation, which should happen anytime now.
Hydrogen works better in outer space, which has better propellant propulsion rates.
And here we go.
Okay.
Wow.
The boosters
And
have
the
been
boosters
separated.
are
See
being
that
separated.
booster
They come
separation,
off
man.
to, because they burn out the fuel. They have to come up to
Wow.
allow the rocket to continue flying.
So now we see the
happy,
core
so
engine is
happy to see
burning,
that.
which is the liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen.
So at this stage of the flight, what the rocket is doing is that it's accelerating in terms of speed, and until it reaches that height, it will continue to increase velocity.
Yes, it was increasing the velocity and altitude at the same time.
From this 3D animation, we can see the data link from the vehicle to different ground stations. We have ground stations at the launch center and also have the stations
And
in the
guys,
Xisha
you can see that the rocket is basically tilted right now, and it should be tilted because it has to reach orbit. So if you want to go to the space, you just go straight up, but if you want to stay in the space, you go straight up and then sideways really fast. That's what famous people say like everyday astronaut, and yeah, that's how the things work.
Work with the what's so-called the.
And that's why you are seeing it right now going sideways, because it has to go into the orbit and stay in the orbit and stay in space to reach the moon. That's why.
50 tons. So this rocket engine is the largest, as Mr. Xu has mentioned, the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen engine, which has the highest specific impulse in China's rocket engine families.
Thank you so much, Bradley Green, for the $5 donation. Really helps the channel to progress with further streams. Thank you so much. And we have this onboard camera of the fairing, basically. We'll see that fairing separation now.
This is camera video from the inside the payload
Yeah,
fairing.
exactly.
The camera seems to be working
And here we go.
very well.
We have the
payload
jettison
fairing is
of the
jettisoned.
fairing, exposing
the
the payload
fairings.
to the vacuum of space. Wow.
The fairings are at the very top of the rocket. They protect the spacecraft, basically.
Yes, once it's out of outer space, once it's out of the atmosphere. It doesn't create any frictions. So we have to lose weight, as well as the boosters.
Absolutely.
We drop all of them to increase the propulsion ratio, so that we can have better
Exactly.
propulsion for speed and for
Absolutely.
altitude.
So are we now out of the Earth's atmosphere?
Yes, we are out of. I think it's more than 100 kilometers above Earth.
The atmosphere is about 70 kilometers.
Yes, about 70 to 110. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
From the voice, we can hear that the telemetry data received from the Xisha Islands, the ground station located on the Xisha Islands, received the data, and it shows that the data is works properly.
And guys, the
normally
unique thing
there are two
about this
different
rocket
kinds
is
of
that
operations.
this
One is, telemetry
rocket
tracking,
specific
and
impulse
other
of the
is
first stage is so large, that's why it is burning till now. It will burn around till 400 seconds, and which you can say,
telemetry tracking control.
yeah, the specific
Mr. Xi
impulse is so
mentioned, we
high
have
for this
optical,
first stage, and that's
telescopes
why
to
the 5B version of this rocket is a single stage to orbit, basically, if I'm not wrong. Because if you just remove the boosters, then it's just a single stage to the orbit, no second
Just
stage.
now, as we've been hearing, those are
That's so
personnel
cool.
on the ground, some on the ground, some in Xisha Islands, to keep tracking the flight of the rocket.
the voice mentioned, the 313 is the trajectory tracking radar. We use in every mission from the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center.
Understood.
Waiting for the booster to separate now.
So
The
now
first
this
stage
will
to
be actually
separate.
a longer phase in that
Main
flight.
engine cutoff can occur
boosters
now
come off.
anytime now.
We've had the fairings come off. We've had
Yes, people, it is happening.
But this is still the critical moment because the core engine has experienced a couple of times of failure in the past 4 missions.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that we witness the separation of the first stage with the second stage, and the core engine burns properly so that we can ensure the success.
Fingers crossed for that.
The first stage use, as Mr. Xu mentioned, the cryogenic propulsion system
I think
with liquid oxygen as
it
the
should
fuel
have
and
exhausted fuel till
liquid
now, the
hydrogen
first
as the
stage.
fuel and
But
as the oxidizer.
okay, let's
It
just
has a
hope
very
everything
high
is cool.
specific impulse. So this with little consumption of fuels, it can
And
provide
here we
much
go,
more.
the main engine cut off and separation of the main engine and the ignition of the second engine. Wow, this is happening, guys. This is really happening. I'm so happy this thing is going to the moon and
the second stage
perform its mission.
F-75D rocket engines, which also use the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen as a propellant. The thrust is smaller, but the specific impulse is
As
even
you can
higher.
see here from the internals of the rocket engine, this is view is also so cool, and we could see those plumes coming out of the rocket engine.
When the rocket is cruising.
Yeah.
And there will be a second ignition later in the flight.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
So you can see from the 3D animation, we have data links from the ocean surface to the I believe that is a ground space tracking ship. And to the vehicle, and also as you mentioned, after this spacecraft, the rocket enters what we call so-called the parking orbit. The rocket engine will be shut down, and we will have a coasting phase with no propulsions, and we will have the second ignition near the equator to have the lunar orbit from the low Earth orbit to the lunar transfer orbit. Now we can see the videos mounted from the camera mounted on the rocket, and also this is camera mounted near the rocket engine. We can monitor the working of the
this view of the rocket engine. I love this view, man. I haven't seen a view from the rocket engine camera, and I really love this view, man. Wow.
And it says second stage engine.
So guys, one thing I would like to share with you, as they said, there will be a second ignition of this engine, this second stage, and that is needed so as to circularize. Sometimes that is needed to circularize the orbit, but for this time that will be needed for circularizing as well as pushing the orbit apogee to the intersect to the moon. And hopefully when it will arrive to the apogee around 4 to 5 days, the moon will also get there, and then it will come into an influential gravity of the moon, and those engines for the service module of the Chang'e 5 will reignite, means will ignite and put itself into a lunar orbit there.
It normally takes a few minutes.
A few minutes.
Philip Wayne, the thing is, if anything comes out for the lunar landing or anything like that, I'll be there with you streaming that. No worries for that, but we don't know till now whether we'll be having the stream for that or not.
When the rocket and the spacecraft eventually hits that translunar orbit.
Yeah. We will have a number of maneuvers before it takes off to the lunar orbit, translunar orbit. And then during that course, we will have a number of corrections, and depends on the precision of the insertion of the spacecraft to that orbit.
What type of maneuvers?
It's like Professor Yang mentioned that once we're leaving the Earth orbit, we'll accelerate to the lunar orbit, and once we reach the lunar vicinities, we have to slow down, what we call a brake, to insert into lunar orbit, so that and also we will descend gradually.
Yes, Philip, Wayne, basically it will drill some and scoop some. Drilling will allow it to have the soil which is beneath the surface, and scooping will help it to get the soil which is on the crust. So it will, the mission requirement is 2 kg of soil and rocks, but the maximum it can have is 4 kg. So yeah.
Great. The first shutdown of the rocket engine on the second stage.
Okay,
so now we are
have
in the
first
coasting phase.
shutdown of the rocket engine.
Yeah. So it's
Wow.
already in low Earth orbit,
Low Earth orbit.
with altitude of about near 200 kilometers. We will fly to, as I mentioned, fly to a place near the equator and then ignite again.
Help us understand a little bit more about this process. When the engine has shut down and the rocket is coasting, what's happening now in this process?
So first, we need to know that because we choose this kind of procedure because of the location of our launch site. Because we don't have a launch site at the equator or near the equator, so we need this coasting phase to adjust its orbit. So the orbit is determined by
China really does some stream, but whenever it does, it really provides some good views of the orbit of the engines, onboard camera, and the stream is really good. I must say that.
And then ignite again, and finally it can enter in orbit with the apogee near the equator. So that's the necessity of this kind of to enter the Earth-Moon transfer orbit.
Mr. Xu, at what point do we know we can reignite again? What are we waiting to see happen?
Well, probably you can see from the telemetry and tracking control ship that they will. It is near the equator. As you mentioned, the launch site is also near the equator. So we're adjusting the spacecraft to the equator, the Earth equator,
Samuel,
so it can.
It is right now in the low Earth orbit, waiting for the second engine to second burn, basically to transfer, to make a lunar transfer orbit, basically. Yeah, that's the thing.
Increase the speed so that it can goes to the perigee, where it can have a longer and more higher velocity compared to the current one. So as we call it, sling off by the Earth's gravity to the lunar orbit.
Usually we also call this second burn of the engines a perigee kick. A perigee kick can be achieved by the second burn of the end stage, and can also be done by a separate rocket engine. Usually, for instance, during the years before, when the space shuttle launched a deep space probe, usually it uses this kind of perigee kick engine. It will be a very small, solid rocket motor. Well, because we know that for the Long March 5 series and of Long March 3A series, we have the capability of the second ignition. So we don't need this kind of separate motors. We only need the engines to shut down first and then ignite again.
So as we call it, to escape from the Earth gravity, the Earth orbiting satellites have a lower velocity, where compared to this mission, you go to the moon, you have to escape the Earth gravity. So we need to fire multiple times in apogee and perigee, and to sling off the spacecraft to the lunar orbit.
During this coasting phase, although the YF-75D engine is not working, but we still need to control the attitude of the spacecraft.
How many orbits will it give? No, there is no orbit basically. There is one parking orbit and then direct lunar insertion.
Prepare for
not lunar transfer orbit, yeah, directly to the lunar transfer orbit.
How do we maintain?
We use some other thrusters, some kind of small thrusters, because you know that at this altitude there will be no atmosphere, so we cannot use other measures. We can only use the rocket thrusters, but much smaller than the, as I mentioned, the main engines. So we use these thrusters to keep the attitude of the spacecraft and also the orientation of the antennas. But still, now we have the link from the rocket to the Tianlian data relay satellite.
Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
This is a rather long process that will likely take a few more minutes until we see that second ignition again.
3 to 4
you
days.
see, now we can only see the 3D animation.
4 to 5
This
hours.
is because, as I mentioned, the videos, transferring the videos need to transfer a large amount of data. So only a ground station can do that. Usually, for a rocket, usually we don't have this high gain antenna to transfer videos. So you see, in some phases there is only critical data transferred. So there is no video.
We're also looking at the flight time to the left of your screen. 1,038 seconds into the flight now.
So the second ignition is approaching.
The second ignition is approaching. This is what we call a coasting phase. It takes a few more minutes until we can see that second ignition happen.
So the second ignition is also a very critical step for this launch, and only a few countries can do this. If your end stage have the capability of the second burning, you can do a lot of work, such as the launching an object into a high elliptical orbit, which is very useful in deep space missions.
Okay. So we are just waiting for the second engine to start right now, guys. And if you are just joining now, let me just tell you that they have attained a low Earth orbit successfully, and now they are just waiting for that TLI burn to complete, means to happen and then complete successfully.
The lander on the moon.
Well, as Mr. Xu has mentioned, we have some instruments on board the lander, because you see, we need to choose the samples, and the samples must be collected properly. So we have a lunar penetrating radar, which will measure the structure under the ground, and we can choose the right place, because you see, we not only need to have a drill deep under the ground, 2 meters, and also we need to know other references of this. But we must have done this within 14 days, because as we have discussed, the design of this spacecraft can only work in the daytime of the moon, and cannot work or cannot survive during the lunar night, which have very extremely cold environment. So we must do this with limited time, and also the scope we also must be designed very carefully. You have asked the question about it is automated or controlled by the ground. So we do have the data link between the ground and the lander, but you see that because the distance between the Earth and the Moon is about 380,000 kilometers, so there is a time delay. So for any actions on the lunar surface, we must consider this influence, and also the operations of the robotic arm, the scoop, and also the drilling. We must consider this, and also another challenge is the packing of these samples. We have the rocket course and 2 meters under the surface, and also have the reckless. We also need to consider the influence of the flames of the rocket engines of the lander, because this also will have influence to the samples.
Will we be able to see that process as it happens?
Well, I think there are a number of cameras that has been mounted on the spacecraft and the descender. I'm sure we will see some of the images. The collecting process might not be easily visible, but the descending and the ascending process we will see quite clearly, as we experienced that from the Long March 3 and 4. The Chang'e 3 and 4 missions, which has descended to the lunar surface and the rovers itself. So we do have cameras that is working very well, but as Professor Yang mentioned, the cameras and the images take a lot of bandwidth, take a lot of capacities of the telemetry and tracking system. So from the lunar surface to the ground will take some time to process, but I'm sure we will see some of the images.
The tasks ahead on the moon, including the drilling, the sampling, the collecting, do we know how time is planned? Do we plan everything down to the last detail, or do we allocate this period of time for each task?
Well, this depends on the plans by the team itself. You see that there are multiple choices, and also after landing, as I mentioned, there are also many other important and critical tasks. We need to measure the accurate coordinates of the lander to prepare for the ascending procedure, and also
so this can be pre-planned in advance.
Exactly.
Everything will have to be.
So we have many multiple steps, and also as Mr. Xu mentioned, we have some instruments such as a panoramic camera. With this camera, we can see the images from the lunar surface and check the situation of the lander itself and choose where to get the samples. So this kind of operations can be designed after the landing procedure and then determined by the commander on the ground control.
Let's talk about, as you mentioned, samples. Let's talk about why we need these samples. By studying these samples, scientists say that we can better understand the volcanic activities on the moon and the age of the moon.
The type of computers they use is specially designed because they have to endure the radiations and everything. So they sometimes use hardened computers which are basically hardened to the radiations, or they use there is some concept I just can't remember right now, but I'll get back to you in the basically when I get it. But yeah, there are some special kind of computer, not the ones which we use in everyday life.
With what we call aliens, maybe some other germs,
like what you see in movies.
Yes.
Like you can.
So these has to be very carefully handled, especially sample return missions. Secondly, is that the samples once returned to the moon, to the Earth, we will have scientific communities to study very carefully. This will be beneficiary in number of areas, including chemical areas, including mineralogical, petrological, isotopic, and geological. So there are many domains that we can study the samples and tell a lot of stories from the lunar surface and in connection to the development of Earth and in the universe as well.
When the samples are brought back to Earth, will it only be China studying them? Could it be shared with other
this
countries?
is the question.
Obviously, it will be shared by other countries. There are examples before. You see that during the end of 1970s, the U.S. gave 1 gram of the lunar soils as gift to our country. So we have some, we studied these kind of samples and have some articles published on very important, very influential scientific journals. And also, there are examples that the former Soviet Union and the United States exchanged their samples. You see that although the Apollo program bring back about 81.7 kilograms of samples, but these samples are from 6 different locations of the moon. And the former Soviet Union gets samples from 3 different locations other than the United States. So they exchange their samples and they get more meaningful scientific research results. So this time I believe we will get our samples, and no one has get samples from this we call the Mount Rumker, which is at the northwest edge of the Ocean of Salt, which is the largest lunar mare.
This is an unexplored region.
Exactly. So, so this region, it's relatively young. You see that other samples from Moon have a history of 3 to 4 billion years, while this region is only about a history of 1 billion years. Yeah, 1 to 2 billion years. So I believe these samples will change our view to the Moon, especially to the history and evolution of the Moon. And with this study, we can have a better understanding of all the hypotheses about the formation of the Moon, and also together with the history of the Earth-Moon system.
When it comes to cooperation,
that was a really good answer.
Between countries in terms of its, their respective space exploration programs, some say, this is just about competition. You're going to have an advantage in your space exploration, whether it's lunar or other celestial bodies. How do we understand China's space program? Is China in competition with other countries, namely the United States and Russia? Or is China in a better place now to cooperate and collaborate with other countries?
Well, as we have discussed, China is a developing country. We develop our space programs according to our own needs, either an engineering goal or a scientific research goal. So we don't compete with other countries, and it's meaningless for us to compete with other countries. So for this kind of scientific research, they're always top one, because you know that for scientific research, we get to this place, and it is we to get the first to get into this place. But we, as we have discussed, we also will have exchange with other countries to have different to have the samples from different places. So these kind of activities or studies will benefit not only one country, will benefit the whole humankind. So I believe that this kind of operation will be a win-win game for all these space-capable nations. And in the future, it will be an inevitable trend for these kind of countries to cooperate together. I am a member from the Moon Village Association and the only founding member of the Moon Village Association from China. And our goal is to promote the cooperation between different countries, either between the governments or between the space agencies, industries, or universities.
Mr. Xi, your take on this?
Well, I think, well, there's a European saying that competition works faster than cooperation.
Oh,
we're
here
hearing
we
that
go.
the
We
second
have the second
ignition
ignition
is taking place
Wow.
As we speak. Now 1,600 seconds into the flight, almost 1,700, the second ignition has happened.
So this second ignition of the rocket will accelerate the spacecraft from the speed of 7.8 kilometers per second to about 11 kilometers per second. So that will be the Earth-Moon transfer orbit, which will be a very high elliptical orbit.
Exactly. Right now, it is basically the maneuver which you are seeing right now. The engines which are lighting is basically used to raise the apogee, which will to intersect the lunar orbit. And once it will reach that apogee, this spacecraft, when it will separate and reach that apogee, the moon will be there to capture it. Basically, it won't be captured as it is. It has to fire its engine also, but yeah, the moon will be there to capture it in its orbit.
Velocity, so it can go to the lunar orbit at the appropriate, like we call it perigee point.
It will take another few minutes until we know whether we have hit that orbit.
Yes, because the second stage uses the quadratic propulsion system. It works longer. It works longer than the first stage.
It's very interesting because a lot of people watch this say that for all these efforts and for all, the challenges that we will encounter in the later stages of this mission, the samples brought back to Earth don't have immediate impact on our world today. All the things we talk about, understanding the moon, understanding.
Guys, just be kind and support science. That's what I want, and we should be doing that because we are all science nerds, space nerds, and we just want science. That's it. Nothing else. So just be kind and respect every nation. So yeah.
Why we go through painstaking efforts to do that?
Well, you see, for space activities, there are direct returns and indirect returns. For instance, navigation satellites, the Earth observation satellites, the communication satellites, which have served our daily life directly, so we can understand that and feel the necessary and the importance of that. But for other scientific research missions, such as the manned space activities and the deep space missions like this Chang'e 5, most of the returns are indirect. So it is our duty, it is we, staff of the employees of the space industry, to give a connection between the public and our space field to let the public know the importance of our activities and know the returns, the great returns from this space activity. There are examples. Analysis shows that the Apollo program, the manned lunar missions, have a return rate of more than 6 or even 11. That means that $1 invested to the Apollo program, there will be returns to the whole society more than $11. So that is only a very limited analysis. So you see that it is very necessary for us to introduce the importance to the public.
Are we looking for the returns here, multiple times returns here, or are we looking into a future that could benefit all mankind, Mr. Xi?
if you see that the number of satellites that is working above us on the Earth's orbit, we can say that you can tell the difference and the importance of space by switching off the space infrastructure for one day. Then you will see that you can't tell the weather, you can't tell where you are, the navigation shut down, your phone shut down, the communication shut down. So everything will shut down. So from these lunar missions, we'll see that this is the very first step to become for humanity to become an interplanetary species, so that we can go to other celestial bodies, even planets. This is a very first step that we take as a human being to be a spacefaring
As you can see, guys, here we can't see the plumes coming out of the rocket. Basically, that's all right because it's burning hydrogen and oxygen, right? And it has a clear plume, so it is totally possible that it is burning and we are not able to see the plume coming out of the engines.
Right? People have talked about possibly relocating the population to the moon one day. Just help it. When we expand our imagination, what could the moon do?
Well, moon is not the ideal place for immigration. So in the future, it is only an outpost of human being. And on the other hand, the moon have a very plenty of helium-3. Helium-3 will be a very ideal fuel for the potential fusion power, which can solve the problem of energy supply of human being. It is said that the helium-3 on board the lunar surface, can be used by human being to supply energy for us. Yes, for more than thousands of years. So that is a very potential utilization of the lunar resources. And also because, as we have discussed, there are water ice on the lunar surface. So in the future, we can utilize this kind of water because you know that the moon is much smaller than the Earth. To lift off from the moon is much more simpler than the Earth. So we can use the water to make propellants. Exactly. So the moon can be a potential outpost for the human being to exploration and exploitation of other celestial bodies of the solar system. So there is one choice. If we want to go to Mars, we can use the moon as our basis and produce propellants and prepare for these kind of missions.
Exactly.
So you can see from this picture, it's a great picture.
Will be considered as a pit stop to refuel the rockets to go to the Mars.
From the lunar orbiter. So the Chang'e 5 is taking picture of the Earth's surface before it goes to the moon.
Yes, that is a beautiful picture of this blue planet we all call home here. And this is the second stage engine, as it says on the upper right screen.
Exactly.
So this is a camera mounted with a direction to the backwards of the spacecraft. So you can see the background is the blue bubble, the Earth.
And isn't the next development the deployment of the solar?
It will be a separation. Once it's shut down, we'll have separation of the second stage.
It's shutting down again. We just heard from.
Yes, we can hear the voice that the second stage is shut down. So the next step will be the separation of the spacecraft with the end stage of the rocket.
Yes, we're looking forward to seeing that separation of that spacecraft and the rocket, or what's left of the rocket.
The voice also reported the shutdown of the small rocket engines for the a small correction of the orbit to make it more accurate.
What does that indicate? What does that tell us?
Because the YF-75D have a very big thrust, so we need small engines to correct the final orbit to make it more accurate.
So that means it's already in orbit.
It's already in orbit.
And it's rotating. Wow, see the view from the Earth to the... Wow.
We're now about 36 minutes into the flight. We understand the spacecraft is already in orbit. We're waiting to hear official announcement about the flight.
Exactly.
Well, you can see
Control and Command.
from the image, you can see this spacecraft is very stable in relative to the Earth.
There we go.
So now
we
this
have
is
the
separation of the spacecraft and the rocket. This is a crucial step in the flight, indicating now
so
that
the separation is confirmed by the telemetry data, which can be checked and examined from the ground and also from the camera. We can. This is a video from mounted on the end stage of the rocket, and we can see. You can see the thrusters of the orbiter of the Chang'e 5.
Yes, Lucas, it could be the ice particles from
so
the
the
booster.
spacecraft is now on its own,
It's
which is what we intended for.
So
it's now in orbit.
So the next, So the next critical step will be the unfolding of the solar panels of the orbiter. With this step, we will have continuous power supply to the spacecraft.
And we can see the unfolding of the solar panels, right? Do we have cameras that will show us the unfolding of the solar panels?
I suppose so. So we also, as we have discussed, we need the telemetry data to be transferred to the ground.
This actually is a really cool view because this
is still the engine.
Basically has a view which is above the Earth, and basically the altitude is high. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah.
Hits that orbit now. It looks like we still need a couple more minutes until everything is in place, and we might hear an official announcement about the status of the flight. Let's talk more about what's going to happen with the main mission this time, the sampling and the returning of those samples. What about the challenges of the return capsule? We know that they will return to Earth, they will re-enter the atmosphere at very high velocity, and then it will land in grasslands in Inner Mongolia. I suppose that's what's going to happen. Talk to us about the potential challenges there.
You know that we choose to recover our re-entry capsule in the mainland of China. You know that the difference from the manned missions from the low Earth orbit is that we don't have much choice, and also the window is very, very narrow.
Professor Yang, are those the solar panels we're seeing there?
No,
I can't quite make. So the solar panels have not been
so we still need the report from the ground staff to report this.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. Please go ahead.
To achieve this goal, we choose what we call the skip re-entry, which means that the spacecraft, the re-entry capsule, will not descending to the ground directly. It will descend from the outer space to about the altitude of about 60 kilometers high, and then raise its trajectory to go back to outer space again, and then going down. To have this kind of measures, we can adjust the landing point in a very wide range. So with this measure, we can land this spacecraft to our mainland of China, or otherwise we will have to recover this spacecraft in oceans. So you see, the United States choose the oceans to recover their Apollo spaceships, but we don't. You see that this needs a very large-scale rescue ships, rescue fleet. So we choose this, which can reduce a lot of the cost, but this makes the complexity of the mission itself. You know that the re-entry capsule is a very small one, much smaller than the Chang'e spaceship. So the tracking of this re-entry capsule is very difficult. You see that tracking so small spacecraft like this Chang'e 5 re-entry capsule with a speed nearly 11 kilometers per second is very, very difficult. We have experienced this during the Long March 5 T1 missions, but that's very successful. And also, this kind of trajectory tracking will be very critical for us to get a very precise prediction of the landing place, and also to have the rescue teams to the place at the first moment.
And Mr. Xu, before I get to you, help us understand what's happening here with this picture.
This is what we call the separation of the spacecraft with the rocket itself. So the spacecraft is in a status where it has integrity checking, self-checking, and also sending signals back to Earth and waiting for the command to deploy the solar panel So we have just heard from the command control center they have received some information from the TT&C ground stations. So they will very soon send a TT&C signal to the spacecraft once everything is validated, and then it will deploy the solar panel and readjust its attitude with the attitude control systems, either small propulsions or gyros. So it will then face a period of time where it will orbit in the equator orbit of the Earth, and then accelerate later on to the translunar orbit.
How long until that acceleration?
It will take a number of circles around the Earth, and then validate everything and make sure that the spacecraft is ready. I think is in 1 or 2. Within 1 day, I think it will send a signal, and then it will go to the translunar orbit.
So basically, information and data as we speak are being sent and validated by ground controlling command. After they do that, they can give instructions to deploy the solar panels.
As you see that this spacecraft is not always above the Chinese territory, so we're using a lot of overseas TT&C networks. The deep space network of ESA has been used for these cooperations, including the cooperation with the European Space Agency and Argentina is part of this effort. So we're using overseas telemetry tracking control stations in connection and linkage with the Chinese network, so that we can have a constant monitoring and control of the spacecraft. This is very important, very precious cargo of our nation, so we have to keep an eye constantly on this spacecraft.
That's definitely what we'll continue to do here on our program, keeping a close eye on the Chang'e 5 mission. Professor Yang, Mr. Xu, I want to thank you so much for your expertise, your explanations, and your insight today on our program. Thank you so much. And that'll do it for our special coverage of the Chang'e 5 launch. In the following days, the spacecraft is expected to bring back the first batch of lunar soil and rock samples in over 4 decades. Stay tuned to CGTN for the latest on Chang'e 5 as it makes its way to the moon. I'm Zhong Shi in Beijing. On behalf of the entire team, thank you so much for the privilege of your time.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we just heard that. Okay, let's see the replay first.
点火！起飞时间：动4时3度分2幺秒，发动6毫秒。
Okay, so we had a successful liftoff from the launch pad, as you just saw. Okay. They didn't broadcast it properly, no worries. Guys, so here we had a successful spacecraft separation, and this Chang'e 5 is ready to go to the moon. Hopefully, although we didn't get any confirmation of the solar panels deployment, but I don't think so there will be any concern about that. The solar panels will be deployed properly. Okay, so just a sec. Yeah, so this one. So yes, this was the thing which we had today. Basically, this mission itself is very unique unique by itself. Just a sample return mission itself causes so many hardships and so many technological challenges, but if it is able to accomplish everything and we get our lunar sample back, that will be a really big achievement for China and Chinese Space Agency, because this will mean that they can demonstrate a sample return mission from a celestial body, and hopefully we can also see some collaboration from NASA for the Mars sample return mission, because they will be having that technology of automated docking, the China, if they are successful, because for this mission, after the sample is stored in the ascender, it will obviously orbit, launch from the lander and automatically dock with the orbiter in orbit. So that will be automated docking, which will be demonstrated in a lunar orbit. So yeah, that will be a pretty exciting thing to have. And Donnie says, just found this channel, excellent job on your feet today, thank you for doing this. Thank you so much, Donnie, I really appreciate that. Successful launch, yes, it was a successful launch, Guo. And thanks thanks again, Rocket Gun, says Labrat. Thank you so much, Labrat, for being here. So yeah, so this is the mission profile. If you just missed whatever was this, this is the mission profile in front of you. We had 4 things in the spacecraft: the ascender, that's the ascender, not descender, ascender, lander, re-entry capsule, and the orbiter. So with this, we have, you also saw the animations also, and it was looking like this. So this is the thing. Once it reaches the moon, it will this lander and the descender will separate. This orbiter and re-entry capsule will stay in the orbit. After that, it will land in the particular site, on the moon. After it lands, it will drill the sample. Drill will be there for around drilling will be there for around 2 feet. Basically the 2 feet it will dig and take the sample. Also there will be a claw for grabbing sample, which there will be a scooping of the sample from the moon surface, which will be 3/4 of the total soil, or the sample. 3/4 of the total sample will be taken through scooping. 1/4 will be taken from drilling, and all those things will be stored in the ascender. Once it is stored in the ascender and properly placed, it will the ascender will detach and fire up its engine and basically go and automatically dock with the orbiter. Once see the takeoff from the lunar surface and dock with the orbiter. So this when it is automatically docked with the orbiter. So the docking process is not like an ISS one. There is nothing like a docking hatch or something like that. This is a simple claw mechanism which will grab the spacecraft, the sender, when it will come close. And when it will come close and the docking is successful, the ascender will then shift the samples to the return capsule. This blue one is the return capsule here, and when it is shifted into the return capsule, this will again separate the orbiter, and this ascender will separate. Ascender will hopefully remain in the orbit or deorbit, I don't know, but the orbiter will again propel itself towards the earth, and once it is near the atmosphere, then it will separate again. Here as you can see, the return capsule and the orbiter is separated, and then the return capsule will make a skip entry maneuver, which means it will enter the atmosphere first, and then it will again come out of the atmosphere and then re-enter the atmosphere. By doing this maneuver, it enhances the braking capability, and enhancing means it is able to endure the braking of the atmosphere, because it will hit the atmosphere at speed of 11 kilometers per second, and the re-entry effects could tear this thing apart. So they have taken this trajectory to enhance the make the braking time larger and reducing the force, and hence taking this capsule to endure all those re-entry effects. And once it is enter the atmosphere, the dog chutes will deploy first, and then the main chute, and then it will have a touchdown, followed by the recovery team taking all the samples. So yeah, this was the thing. And hopefully if they stream again, it means if I find a stream again for their lunar landing, then obviously I'll be streaming, so don't worry with that. And yeah, so and I think the Tan1 is reaching Mars soon. Space programs are fantastic, James. Yes, James, you are right. This Tan1 is reaching Mars, and that's also a really ambitious mission. I don't know how are they able to do all these ambitious missions in just 1 year. The Mars one and this Moon one. Mars is also a very ambitious one because it has an orbiter, it has a lander, and it has a rover all in one mission. NASA only is sending a rover, nothing, and no orbiter. So yeah, a pretty exciting year to have. Although it was not a good year, we all know that, but for the space program, it was really a nice year. And Colonel Lucas says waiting for the return of Hayabusa 2. Yes, if I'm not wrong, it will be returned. It will be basically throwing the samples back to the towards the Earth in December, if I'm not wrong. And we will be getting the asteroid samples. The Osiris Rex also took the asteroid samples, and it is right now there in the orbit of the asteroid only, Osiris Rex. But still, you can say, expect the launch window to open in March 2021, and then it will uh, basically inject itself towards orbit which will intersect the Earth. The Osiris Rex itself has a great story with the associated with it, because of that all leaking of the sample which they took, and the thing which that they can't measure how much they took, how much the weight of the sample they took. So yeah, that's the thing. Thanks Canon Lucas for saying anytime you get views like this, it doesn't get old. Philippine, exactly. It really matters. It actually, the this thing when something gets recognition, the hard work gets recognition, it really uh, you can say boost the motive for me to uh, keep streaming and boost this channel. So yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I like this commentator, very geeky and professional. Thank you so much. I can't read the Chinese, so I can't say your name also. So yeah, the reporting of okay, okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so tomorrow, guys, just a bit. I would like to tell you that we have a launch tomorrow also, if I'm not wrong. The Starlink mission of the SpaceX. I'll be streaming that also with you. They had a recent abort. No, are we having a Starlink mission? Yes, we are having a Starlink mission tomorrow in just 5 hours from now. Oh, wow. Okay, so I need to make a stream for that. I didn't know the timing for that. Okay, no worries. In just 5 hours from now, the SpaceX will be attempting to launch another batch of Starlink satellites, and it will also be a pretty cool thing to watch. Obviously, the SpaceX launches are always a treat to watch because of its landing and yeah, landing basically. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Until then, this is Priyanshu Roila. You just saw